For 13 years, the Western Conservative Summit has brought the nation's top conservative leaders to Colorado. Presidential candidates, members of the president's cabinet, governors, senators, members of Congress, influencers, media personalities, celebrities, and local leaders. More importantly, because the summit is hosted by Colorado Christian University, it is committed to education. Our workshops have educated thousands of conservatives on America's founding principles and how to address the most pressing issues facing our nation. The Western Conservative Summit Youth Conference has introduced the next generation of conservatives to Christ and the philosophical foundations of conservatism. We are preparing young leaders to take on today's ideological battles. In 2020, we couldn't meet in person because of the COVID shutdowns. So we produced the film America, America, God Shed His Grace on Thee, reminding Americans of their Christian heritage. Last year, 6 documentaries showcased the beauty and majesty of the Western United States while covering issues like the Second Amendment, Western energy, federal lands, and the rodeo. Now back in person, the 2022 Western Conservative Summit welcomes you to the Gaylord Rockies. In 2015, then CCU President Bill Armstrong admonished conservatives to mount their horses and ride. It was a call to personal action for our communities in the midst of our challenges. John Wayne once said, "Courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway." Fellow patriots, welcome to the 2022 Western Conservative Summit. It's time to saddle up and ride.
Please welcome the chairman of the Western Conservative Summit, Jeff Hunt.
All right, y'all have a wonderful day. Did y'all have a wonderful day? There we go. All right. We're just coming back from dinner. We're ready to start the evening session here at the Western Conservative Summit. To all of our friends tuning in from C-SPAN and watching online across the country, welcome to the Western Conservative Summit. My name is Jeff Hunt, and I'm the co-chairman of the Western Conservative Summit, but I have had a title change. When I was out there in the lobby, I met a champion NFR rodeo man. He said, "You're not the co-chairman of the Western Conservative Summit, you're the wagon boss of the Western Conservative Summit." That's going to be my new title. I like that. I'm the wagon boss of the Western Conservative Summit. Western ho! Tonight we will be honoring our military and hearing from former U.S. Navy SEAL Jimmy Graham, the 11th Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos, our national under 30 speech contest winner Jessica Holmes, Isabel Brown, Emily Seidel, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt, Representative Lauren Boebert, and Kayleigh McEnany. To begin our evening, will you please join me in standing and welcoming the Colorado wing of the Civil Air Patrol Mile High Squadron to present the colors.
Please welcome back Colorado Christian University's own Legacy Quartet.
You may be seated. Thank you. You place your hand upon his Bible when you swear to tell the truth. His name is on our greatest monuments, and all your money too. And when we pledge allegiance, there's no doubt where we stand. There's no separation, we're one nation under him. In God we still trust. Here in America, he's the one we turn to every time the going gets rough. He is the source of all our strength, the one who watches over us. Here in America, in God we still trust. Push him out, and erase his name from everything this country's all about. From the schoolhouse to the courthouse, they're silencing his word. And now it's time for all believers to make our voices heard. In God we still trust. He's the one we turn to every time the going gets rough. He is the source of all our strength, the one who watches over us. Here in America, in God we still trust. Here in America, here in America, in God we still trust. Here in America, in God we still trust. Right here in America, in God we trust. Amen. Now we'd like to invite you to sing with us loud and proud as we do a salute to our armed forces. When we get to your branch, if you are current or a former military member, please stand so you can be recognized, and please sing along with us. Here we go. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. Then it's hi, hi, hey, the army's on its way. Count off the cadence loud and strong. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. For wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along. And now the Navy. Anchors away. always ready for the call. We place our trust in Thee, through howling gale and shot and shell, to win our victory. Send Boebert, this is our guide, our pledge, our motto too. We're always ready, do or die. I Coast Guard, we fight for you.
And our Air Force.
Off we go into the wild blue yonder, climbing high to the sun. Here they come, soon to lead our thunder, and the boys give them the gun. Down we dive, spouting our flame from under, off with one terrible roar. We live in fame, we're down in flame, no nothing can stop the U.S. Air Force. And the Marines. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we will fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are proud to claim the title of United States Marines. Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force, the United States Marines.
Thank you for your service.
What a way to start our Military Appreciation Night. Thank you so much, Legacy Quartet. We're going to continue our military appreciation. Jimmy Graham is the CEO of Able Shepherd and the director lead instructor for the Active Shooter Response Training Center in Centennial, Colorado. Graham and his team of experts provided hands-on training in both armed and unarmed skills and solutions to face the growing problems of potentially life-threatening situations. Jimmy spent more than 15 years with the U.S. Navy SEAL teams, earning the rank of Chief Petty Officer E7. During that time, he earned certifications as a sniper, Joint Tactical Air Controller, Dynamic Range Safety Officer, and Master Training Specialist. Jimmy also served for 7 years as Protective Officer and Lead Instructor for the CIA's Elite Global Response Staff, GRS, providing protective security details for, quote, high risk and, quote, critical areas overseas. Jimmy is also a fellow in community safety with Colorado Christian University's Centennial Institute. He and his wife Rachel are raising 4 amazing children. Himself, ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Graham.
Please welcome the CEO of Able Shepherd and former Navy SEAL CIA Protective Officer, Jimmy Graham.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jesus Christ. Guide my words. If anybody ever asks me, what have you done for your country? My answer will forever be, not enough. Don't clap, you're gonna mess up my timeline if you clap. I love this country, and on the heels of Memorial Day, if there's veterans in the room, is it just me? Am I the only one? Does it pain you a little bit more every Memorial Day? It stings to see people that are leading this country say thank you to our fallen while simultaneously dismantling our country. A couple years ago, I traveled around the South Denver area and I spoke to many churches because I felt called. There were 3 questions on my heart that I wanted to ask them in order to prepare them for what I saw coming. They were simply, what do you stand for? What's your hill to take? And do you care enough to do anything about it? What do you stand for? That's not such a simple question. If you don't have the answer to that if you don't have the answer to that, you need to figure it out before you leave this room tonight. You can't move forward if you don't understand that. Upon reflection and prayer, this is what I came up with for Jimmy Graham. I am pro-Jesus, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment. Thank you, and it's specifically in that order, and it's said specifically that way, and this is why. Pro-God is a little too vague nowadays. That could pretty much mean anything. So when I say pro-Jesus, make no mistake, I mean Jesus Christ. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Jesus Christ, that's what I'm pro, before anything else. And I'm pro-life, meaning that I believe that children, all people are made in the image of God, and they shouldn't be murdered and raped and ripped from their mother's womb. And pro-Second Amendment, because in my line of work, I see a lot of people that love guns, and they say, I'm pro-guns. I say, guns are cool, guns don't make you cool. I'm like, the right to defend my life is a God-given right. If it's given by the government can take it away. If it's given by God, nobody can take it away. And by the way, if you take my guns, I will still defend my children, my family, my community with any means necessary. But knowing that puts me back in the story. I've told my children this, as I said at Liberty University, it dawned on me at 30-something years old that there is an old covenant. There's an Old Testament, there's a New Covenant, a New Testament, there's a cross in the middle, and I'm living here. Like, we know the back of the book and we win, but as soon as I understood this, my life changed. I'm a role. The book of James is already taken, but there's a book of Jimmy, and it could be the best book written. That changed my life, literally. What's your hill to take? The second question, what is your hill to take? My hill to take is to shepherd. I'll say it a different way, to add value to other people. I didn't know that. I had to investigate that. I heard someone say it, and to shepherd, let me tell you what I mean by that. It means to protect, to train, to lead. If you say sheepdog, I'm fine with that, but that's not biblical. I went deeper than that, and I said my job, my calling is to protect and to train and to lead, to provide a better model. And people say, well, what if you're not being attacked? I'm like, you're always being attacked. There's 50 attacks a day. You're just visualizing the one where they're going to come and take your stuff or whatever. Meanwhile, your grandchildren are being slaughtered behind you. So I'd say we do need to rise up and be shepherds. Don't take Jimmy Graham's word for it. Go to the absolute truth, the truth with a capital T. Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, watching over them. Not because you must, but because you're willing, as God wants you to be. Not pursuing dishonest gain, but eager to serve. Not lording it over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you'll receive the crown of glory that will never fade away. That's 1 Peter 5, 2-4. That's a verse that changed my life and launched my vision. I rewrote this speech. They asked me to to come up and speak to you folks. And it was about leadership, and it was about, we the people, starts with me the person and all that. And then we had a tragedy recently happen. So I woke up at 4 in the morning and I rewrote the deck. I rewrote the slide deck with their permission. Thank you to the IT folks that worked with me. And I said, there's a message in me that only Jimmy Graham can give. I had everybody else's quotes but mine. So if you'll allow me, I want to provide, I've been on Bongino, I've been on Hannity, talking about real solutions. This month marks 10 years I've been doing this since I left, active duty. When I left military, then CIA, then launched this endeavor. It was 10 years ago. This is the 3 points that I've been giving recently. The people, bold architectural innovation, and the culture. Those are the 3 answers that we can absolutely work with. Just take this for free. Please, someone use it. I've got some ideas. If you beat me to it, I'll buy you a beer. It starts with the people. It must. So who are the people that we're training? We must make sure that we start with the right people, and they deserve the tools to be successful. We give this away. We give it to local law enforcement. We give it to schools, business, churches, civic groups. I say it this way. In an emergency, everyone has a responsibility. Everyone has a responsibility. I've heard people say, I didn't sign up for that. Nobody signed up for this. I've heard people say, I'm a teacher, it's not my job to protect kids. It's every adult's job to protect kids. I'm not saying that you have to pick up a gun. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's your job. Because when I leave my kids with you, they're alive, and I expect them to be alive to the best of your ability. But we have to understand what are the tools to be successful. We've all heard of run, hide, fight. That started out of Texas. It was about 8-10 years ago, something like that, and it was a good start because it's easy to remember. Run, hide, fight went like this. Run. If you can't run, hide. If you can't run or hide, then fight. The problem is you post it on the wall, say run, hide, fight, not teach people how to run, where to hide or how to fight. And when they're scared, they can't perform. It's not a capability. We took another stab at it. The other thing is it's chronological. Emergencies don't happen in order. You need to have the tools to be successful. We took a stab at it and called it the Defend training modules. The first thing on there says the situation will dictate the order of these modules. I don't know the order because every situation is different. It is, I know you want to hear this, the responsibility is on you to protect yourself. It always has been. Don't buy the lie. Don't repeat the lie that someone else will come to take care of you. If you do, that's fantastic. Defend stands for defense, evacuate, fortify, emergency medical aid, notify others in your immediate area, and dial 911. Let's talk about defense. This has worked since the beginning of time. Self-defense and also the armed professionals that are going to come and secure that school. That's all under defense. It's the most effective, and it says this. In the protective world, there's a policy, there's a principle. To get to them, you have to go through me. To get to them, you have to physically go through me, and that should be difficult, right? That works. That's almost all that works. Evacuate. Evacuate, go show them. If you had to leave your home, this isn't just for schools, for your home, if it was on fire, where would you go? Your business, your school, your civic group. You need to know this before the emergency. I've taken kids by the hundreds to another business on a day where it was sunny and beautiful, and now they know where to go. If you show them, they remember. If you tell them, they forget. They know because I took them there and introduced them to the business owner. That's evacuate. Fortify. There was a recent shooting here in Colorado. We've got a bad track record, obviously, with this, where the school's secured, police come by, they're doing the clearances, they bust out a window, reach around, open the door, and then they come in. That's not fortified. The fact that that window is there to be broken and to get in there doesn't say you're fortified. You can't say lockdown if you're not locked down. This must be difficult. So we can do better on this. Emergency medical aid means tourniquets, wound packing, chest seals. That's an hour class that anybody can do. Anybody can do this. Maybe your role isn't a physical go fight a guy role, but there's a little girl bleeding, and if you know what to do, you can save her life. And if you don't, you can't. Okay, so that is a responsibility. The other one's notify others in your immediate area. Well, you hear gunshots. Not necessarily. Some of these large campuses, there could be an active shooter situation due to some closed doors, some angles, some distance. You don't even know you're in danger. And now this threat is heading your way. Call it hot zones to warm zones to cold zones. Here they come and you don't even know it. So we must notify others in our immediate area so they can save themselves. And then dial 911. I hear this regularly. It's okay, we have a 3-minute response time. I run these scenarios all the time. And what I see is you tell them, use your phone, act like you're calling 911. When people are saving their lives and aiding children, guess what they don't do? They don't call 911. Which means your 3-minute response time didn't start for 10 minutes. That's 13 minutes. That's unacceptable. We can do better than this. This is everybody's responsibility, so if somebody says, it's not my job to call 911, then I would say find a new job. I'm sorry that being a teacher changed. It has. No one signed up for this. This is just the reality, and I want to see my children again. And I tell people too, don't talk to me as if I'm not a father. I have 4 children. I have skin in this game, and I will for a long time. By the way, even if I didn't, because I am a shepherd, I am a protector, I'll be doing this for the rest of my life. Mark my words. Architectural innovation. We need to talk about this. Remember when I said to get to them, you have to go through me? Again, this is for free. Just do what you will with it, but I must tell you this. I've been to STEM school the other day. I was in the neighborhood, drove by, and there's kids playing out in the parking lot. I understand the challenges of restructuring schools, but someone's building a school right now. The next time you see children playing in the grass in the parking lot, think of this model. For this model and for our nation's needs, I am not suggesting a new way. I'm begging you to return to an old way, a way of honor, a way of integrity, a way of accountability. This building says to get to them, you have to go through me. And I don't care to hear, I don't want it to look like a prison. I don't want it to look like it's covered in blood. I've worked in embassies all over the world. They're gorgeous. Will you appreciate the walls, because they protect you so you can get back to the work of educating children. As an embassy overseas, you have a job to do, and you can do it because of those walls. So you trust them and you appreciate them, and by the way, they're very, very nice. So if we have a model, envision this just for a moment, just close your eyes, go on a walk with me. What if the building said to get to them, you gotta go through me? What if kids could play in a city park atmosphere and just be kids and learn? And what if the building said there's only a couple entrances, and if those are attempt to be violated, now we can actually assume a posture and say, personally with my body to get to them, you have to go through me. I haven't seen a better option. I've been doing this for 10 years. We always push this forward, and we must talk in times like this. People say, are you trying to capitalize on a tragedy? I say, I never stop talking. 2 weeks after a shooting, the world stops listening. The families don't forget. Everyone affected doesn't forget. My company, Able Shepherd does not forget. This is what we do, and we're trying to help. So please, please, please listen. What if, one of my biggest fears is that I'm working in Centennial, Colorado, and something happens at my school, my kid's school in Lone Tree. That's 15 minutes at the best. I need to be there. I can't get there in the time. What if I was working in this building? It was connected to the school, and it was a private school. This model must be a private Christian school. Why private? Less red tape. Why Christian? Because I'm not interested in starting broken. So now it's Jimmy Graham running down the hall. Now it's one of you protectors running down this hall. Because a light went off and your business paused, you go through a secure corridor and your phone rings. In your device, in your ear, your phone rings, and it's the person in this school running the command center telling you where the threats are. Why mess around on the first floor when you know the threat's on the second floor? And they're guiding you. Have you talked to real police officers on their way to an active shooter? The last thing they need is a floor plan. Hey, give me a book to read. How about a map? I need you talking to me because I am trying to go 130 miles an hour, not kill anybody, and I have to switch into a gear that most of us don't know. Most of you don't know. They're trying to think angles and protect themselves and not shoot innocent victims and all that. They've got so much going on. Please don't hand them a floor plan. We need to guide them, and we can do better at this. What about the culture? The third thing, the culture says that this is my job to protect my kids. And everybody said this. The world will be a safer place. It's my responsibility to protect these kids. You wouldn't prop the door open. Why? Because it's my job to do this. And then do you care enough to do anything about it? Don't answer that with words, because I'm going to know the answer next week, okay? Answer with how you leave this seminar. When you leave the summit, what are you going to do about it? We need leaders. What does that mean? John Maxwell said it best. I love this quote. It wrecked me. There's only one reason to become a leader, and that's to add value to other people. To add value to other people. If you're going to represent me, if you're going to be a representative, you're going to represent me, you've got to up your game, right? That means I need to be the best that I can possibly be, and then you got to go represent that. There's 4 things needed to be a leader, he says. You must value people. And I thought that was kind of funny at first. Like, yeah, who doesn't? But then I remember absolutely saying this at some point in my walk. I said, somewhere along the way, I learned that I actually care about people. And I know that's weird, right? But I mean, I'm that guy that if you're in Colorado and you're in the ditch, I may have pulled you out of the ditch. I've come home wet many nights not planning. Did you know that to hook up a minivan to pull it out of the snow, you must lay on your back? You can't do that on your knees. You gotta lay on your back. Ask me how I know that, right? I care about people. You must make yourself more valuable. You can't give what you don't have. You must take breaks, you must invest in yourself, and then continue to give. It becomes a habit, it becomes a philosophy, and we the people must do this. You can't buy it, and you can't elect it. You must know what others value. This isn't just Jimmy's vision. Jimmy's vision is to protect people, to take care of one another, shepherd, to do all that, to add value to other people. But there's many missions leading to a vision. This is Andy Stanley. Many missions, they start, they stop, they're celebrated. They start, they stop, they're debrief. We learn it, we pivot, we go on. Don't try to do a lifelong mission. It will burn you out. Do many missions, be ready to pivot, and head towards your ultimate vision. And the 4th thing, and I love this, he says you must do things that God values. If you don't do things that God values, you could be the best leader in the world and lead people straight to hell. Everybody in here is a teacher and a leader. You don't have to like it. You're a teacher and you're a leader. You're teaching people right and wrong, and you're leading them to heaven or hell. They don't have to follow you. That's on that credentials of trust that you've built over years, but you are teaching and you are leading. Make no mistake. Support current leaders as you become one. Support current leaders as you become one. If you're thinking about it, if you're that leader, you feel that burning in your chest that's calling you to do more, take that book that came in your bag, find these leaders and support them. Do something. In the military, we call it don't stand by to stand by to stand by. Do something. Get into motion. Okay? I put a couple. Why did I put Dan Bongino? There's many people. Dan Bongino is the only person I know that's a professional protector with a global voice. He gets that, and that's a good place to start. What about Lila Rose? Like Seth, she's saving babies. What about RMGO? If you're local, they're fighting for your right to defend your life. What about Jack Hibbs? He's a pastor. He's on fire out of California, of all places. David Barton is a national treasure. Yes. He understands that the answer to our future lies in our history. We can't stop teaching history. Brave Church, I'm delighted to see my pastors here tomorrow. Jeff Strausentraub, Centennial Institute, you guys know them. Live Action, Lila Rose, the Family Research Council. All of these people were building the ark before the flood. They didn't just pop up in 2020. They've been doing this and they knew this was coming. Real Life and then the Daily Wire, obviously. These are leaders. Don't tell me it can't be done. I'm sick of hearing this, it can't be done. We do, you know what, telling me it can't be done, that's really annoying to the people that are doing it. Every single day, right? My community, I want these people up here to honor them. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that we need each other. Our motto is simply take care of one another. What they don't know, these guys and gals thank me all the time. Thank you for the program. Thank you for this. We raise money. We go up in the mountains. We give it to save babies. We go up and do stuff we would have done anyway. We just raise money and we move the needle toward good because that's our job. It's absolutely amazing, but what they don't fully understand when they say thank you, that I get more out of this than anybody. I was SEAL teams, I was GRS teams, and I tried to start a business as a Lone Ranger. And it was devastating, and we lost everything, or we thought we did. I thought the business failed. We celebrate 10 years today from Duty to Act LLC. It's the same business, I just had to go through some valleys. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, but we need each other, and we need to understand that. If anybody ever asks me, what have you done for your country? My answer will forever be, not enough. I've got more to give. I'm not asking for favors. Thank you. The hardest part about this talk, the only part I was worried about, is if I could compose myself after that flag went by. So I pulled that off, and then I scrambled at the end, so forgive me. You have a responsibility. I have a responsibility. If we're talking schools, churches, civic groups, I've had our local security director tell me, we've just got to hold out for 3 minutes. It's my duty to tell you this. That's a bad place to start, because a 3-minute response time by police. A healthy place to start is if the police don't come, we've still got a plan. And if they show up, it's better. Then deconflict and make sure you don't poke a bunch of holes in each other, and make sure that you understand it's your responsibility to protect your children. It's your responsibility to protect your schools, your churches. If it's your responsibility to educate your children. We pay our taxes so professionals aid us. We're on the same team as these heroes in blue. But we have to work together. But it is ultimately my responsibility, and we must understand that first. Please join us in saving this nation. I'm a parent. I don't have a choice. My kids need to see me doing this so they know how to do it. Because we made a damn mess, and it kills me that they have to clean it up. God bless each and every one of you. Take care of one another. Thank you. Thank you. There you go. Back up this way.
Please welcome the president of Colorado Christian University, Dr. Donald Sweeting.
Betsy DeVos, her interest in education was sparked at an early age by her mother, a public school teacher. And her interest grew when she sent her own children to school and was confronted with the reality that not every child in America is granted an equal opportunity to receive a great education. She saw firsthand the work leaders in her hometown were doing to increase educational opportunities for students and choices for parents. And she's been involved in the fight to provide better education options across the nation ever since as an advocate for children and a voice for parents. For 15 years, DeVos served as an in-school mentor for at-risk children in the Grand Rapids public schools. She became a leader in the movement to empower students and worked for the creation of new educational choices for students in 25 states. But then on November 23, 2016, then-President-elect Donald Trump announced that he would nominate Betsy DeVos to serve as the Secretary of Education. She served in that position from 2017 to 2021 as the U.S. Secretary of Education. Now, in my opinion, she was one of the best cabinet picks President Trump had and one of the best secretaries of education that we've ever had. And I want to tell you why. First of all, she was an advocate for a student-centric approach to education. Second, she was a great supporter for school choice and parental choice in education. Third, she wanted to hold schools accountable to higher standards to improve education for America's children. Fourth, she dared to suggest that money is not the main issue in the decline of educational quality. Then, she dared to challenge the unions and question their progressive orthodoxy. She was a great advocate in protecting the religious liberty of faith-based schools. She pushed for schools to reopen during the coronavirus pandemic. As a graduate of Calvin College, she also understands the importance of a Christian liberal arts education. And so we are so honored to have her here at the Western Conservative Summit. Would you please welcome the 11th Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos.
Please welcome former United States Secretary of Education, the Honorable Betsy DeVos.
Well, good evening. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Dr. Sweeting, for that very kind introduction. It's so great to be with you again, and it's great to be with a crowd of America-loving conservatives. What a terrific gathering, and what an important time to pause, discuss, and reflect on the things that matter most, and then go out and win the fights for our ideas. Now, it might just be this magnificent Colorado altitude, but everywhere I look, it feels like things in America are going up. Wait a minute, I see some confused looks. Did she say up? Seems like everything's been going downhill since Biden took office. Au contraire, my friends, au contraire. Lots of things are going up. The price of food, going up. The price of gas, going up. Inflation, going up. Illegal immigration, going up. Crime, going up. The number of males beating females in women's sports, going up. Not a day goes by without another report or indicator showing just how far and fast things are going up right now. And we know what that means. The likelihood of conservatives winning across America this fall is going way up. The failures of all the progressive policies that have taken root in Washington are on full display for all to see, and it isn't pretty. The Trump administration, in which I was proud to serve, has been gone from Washington only 16 months, just over a year, and look how quickly things have deteriorated. The importance of strong leadership and solid policies has never been clearer. And the absence of both, capable leadership and good policy, is on full display for the American people. They know what's happening. We can see it every day, and we're all paying the price, quite literally, every day. Perhaps no one has paid a higher price than our kids. The failures of the government-run, union-controlled education system have been laid bare the past 2 years. The consequences are devastating. Unthinkable learning loss, unprecedented mental health issues, time and opportunities lost that can never be recovered. America's parents see this. They see who is responsible. And when they go to say something about it, to advocate for their kids, they see the FBI called on them. Can you believe that? They've even, and I still can't believe this, they've even seen it suggested that the National Guard should be called in to help silence them. The National Guard. You couldn't make this up if you tried, and then there's this. It's inexcusable. But like you and me, America's parents have had enough. They've had enough of the excuses, the delays, the shoulder shrugs. Parents want better for their kids, and they want better now. It may seem like much of this is a new phenomenon, but this was, in fact, always the design. It's true. The father of America's government-run education system, Horace Mann, once wrote that parents should be viewed as having given their children as, and I quote, hostages to our cause, end quote. You heard that right, hostages. In Mann's day, at least the cause was mostly about education. Today, kids have been held hostage to radical leftist fever dreams, hostage to needless COVID school shutdowns and mask mandates, hostage to racial indoctrination programs designed to make them hate each other or themselves, hostage to history curricula that historians say is false. Think about that for a minute. Hostage to radical gender identity policies designed to defy the laws of nature and of nature's God, that try to tell your sons and daughters they aren't actually sons or daughters, just the spawns of birthing people, whatever that means, or that they aren't even boys or girls, that they're they and them, not he or she. Hostage to bureaucrats in Washington who think they can and should control everything from on high. Hostage to failing schools, to unsafe schools, or schools that can't, don't, or won't meet kids' learning needs. The stark truth today is that America's students are held hostage to a system that assigns them to a school, teaches them what it wants, and does its best to keep what families want, out of the conversation. Well, hear me clearly. It is time to set the hostages free. That's what my new book, Hostages No More, is about. It's about helping our kids, our families, and our teachers to be hostages to a broken one-size-fits-all system no more. The big school union bosses already got their hefty ransom, paid for by you and me in the form of so-called emergency COVID relief. A staggering $2 billion was sent by federal taxpayers to government schools across the country. That's 3 times the entire annual budget for the U.S. Department of Education. I say it's time for students and parents to get their fair share. And the good news is, it's happening. Education freedom is on the march across America. I was proud, along with so many others in Washington and across the states, to help spark the fire that's burning hotly and spreading quickly today. Education freedom policies are unlocking new learning opportunities for millions of students across America. It's common sense. It shouldn't matter what adjective, that's a describing word for anyone a little rusty on their parts of speech. It shouldn't matter what word comes before the word school. Public, private, charter, religious, micro, magnet, virtual. What should matter is the quality of the experience and the education fit for each student. Families should be in charge of education decisions. Education should not be the domain of government, it should be the domain of the family. And every family should have the opportunity to make the right choice for their children, regardless of where they live or how much money they make. School choice and education freedom work. It's what parents want, it's what students need, and it's up to us to deliver it to them. Let me leave you with one other thought. Pick a problem in this country you're upset about today, any problem, and I bet I can draw a straight line from that problem to its root cause in the failures of our government-run education system. Education is the lifeblood of everything we want America to be, of everything we want for the rising generation. And education freedom is an issue that conservatives should embrace and own, because it's about individual opportunity and freedom, and it's about preserving and strengthening all that makes our country great. I'd argue that if you fix education, you'd go a long way toward fixing America. It really is that simple. Thank you for letting me join you tonight. God bless you. I look forward to our conversation.
Well, thank you, Secretary DeVos. Thanks so much for being with us.
It's an honor.
Delighted to have you here. And I can't help but thinking the last time I saw you was in Washington, D.C. You were secretary, and Colorado Christian University's students were asked to lead the National March for Life, which is a huge event. And we brought 100 students, and we had a big gala at the Museum of the Bible, and you took your whole evening and gave it to us to spend time with the students and speak to them. I think we have a picture to put up on the screen. I believe so. There it is.
Oh, yeah. I remember that well. That was wonderful.
And Hugh Hewitt was the one who asked you questions, and just the students came away saying she spent the whole time and cared about us, and that sent a huge message. And by the way, congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
We have a copy here. Let's put a picture on the screen as well. The book, Hostage No More. I encourage you to get it. Chapters include Opportunity of a Lifetime, The Un-American Education System, The Real Debate Isn't Betsy DeVos. I love that. There's Nothing Civil About Civil Rights, The Education Freedom Agenda, The Great Parental Awakening. Sounds fascinating, so we all need as much help as we can get. Thank you very much.
Thanks. It's exciting to have it come out.
Well, in the last 2 weeks, the nation's been a bit shaken by the school shooting and the series of school shootings. A lot of people are thinking about that. It's in the news, and I was just curious what goes on in your mind about how to understand this and how to protect students when you see it happen.
Well, I, like everyone else, was horrified by what I saw and learned, and it brought me back to the Parkland episode when I was in office, and just the horror there. And my heart just breaks for the families involved and all of those on the periphery as well. And you know, there are so many emotions and so many thoughts that run through my mind, and as I'm sure others do, and it's really, I think, difficult to see a lot of politicians, a lot of leaders of our country try to boil it down to one simple thing or another and say that this is going to solve the problem. We know that this last 2 years has been very, very difficult for millions of children. And we should be more and more aware of the toll that it is, all of these shutdowns and all of the attendant consequences have taken on them. We know a lot of things about these individuals who go and perpetrate these horrible acts, and we need to be focusing more on how do we stop those individuals from actually acting out, and how do we keep those things from happening. I led at President Trump's request a school safety commission after the Parkland shooting occurred, and we compiled a very comprehensive resource for states and schools to really look at how they can best address these issues on their campuses, and understanding that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but I encourage anyone who is in a position to help shape policy in your schools or in your communities to reference that. There's a lot of really good and important resources.
I want to talk to you also about parental rights and education. Last year in the fall, there was a debate between Governor Terry McAuliffe in Virginia with Glenn Youngkin, and McAuliffe made the comment, "I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach." And there was a rippling effect that went out from that, a reaction, a kind of a parental revolt against that kind of thinking. You refer to it as a great parental awakening. What's going on? Where's that going?
Well, that was, I think, the most high-profile recent example. It was a turning point in that campaign. Glenn Youngkin was an underdog for that race in Virginia for governor, and at that moment, Terry McAuliffe had an opportunity to, bring that back and say, well, wait a minute, I didn't really mean that. But he doubled down on it and really laid his cards out, showing his true colors. And so it is, I think, a very good and current example of what we're facing. The system that exists to serve itself has continued to double down on all of the efforts to do just that. And all of the lengthy school shutdowns and lockdowns, they weren't based on science. They were really based on politics, and there's ample evidence to demonstrate just that. And so it really is an important time for parents to speak up, for concerned community members to speak up and to demand that parents actually get the opportunity to direct and control their kids' education. I like to use the metaphor of a backpack. Kids go to school every day with the stuff they need, generally in a backpack. And I think metaphorically, we should attach the dollars that are already spent on that child in that child's backpack for their parents, their families, to decide where they're going to buy their child's education. And this is an issue whose time has come, and the last 2 years have really laid that bare.
So you've been a great advocate for school choice, and we all appreciate that very much. So why are the unions so opposed to reform? Help us understand. You saw into that more than we'll ever get to see.
Well, very simply, it's a threat to their power, their control, and their ability to control resources. But this last 2 years, the system has been given $200 billion, as I mentioned in my remarks, $200 billion, 3 times the annual budget of the U.S. Department of Education. And so now is the time for policymakers to say, well, we're going to take the money for kids and make sure parents can direct and control. If they don't like the school their child is assigned to for whatever reason, they should be able to take it and use it in the venue or the customized education that's going to work for that child. The unions they continue to be the most formidable foe, and unfortunately, the other party, the Democrat Party, is totally complacent and bought and paid for by that control of the unions. And that has got to change, because education is not a partisan issue. It should not be a partisan issue. We should be about what is right for kids, what is right for them, not for a system, for a building, or any other institution.
So what I don't understand is why they don't look at the data that reading scores continue to plummet, math scores, and internationally our standings keep dropping, science scores.
That's right.
And you would think that parents would be outraged, and how do the unions keep their cartel, really, their iron grip on this whole thing when we're failing?
Well, their grip is they're starting to lose their grip because parents have awakened. And I think if there is a silver lining to the last 2 years and everything we had to navigate with COVID, it is that people and parents and people in general have really awakened to the failings of our K-12 one-size-fits-all, 175-year-old industrial model of education, and they know deep down that things have to fundamentally change. Now is the time to do it, and you know, it is just going to take people talking to their legislators, appealing to those who have the opportunity to change policy, to make policy, to do just that. And it starts in the states, but there's every opportunity also at the federal level to reorient policies around the student, which is exactly what I did while in office, was to do what was right for students to the greatest extent possible by law. But now is the time to make those changes, and we can't do it soon enough because, again, so many kids are hurting and so many kids have fallen months, if not years or more behind because of the last 2 years.
The comeback we often hear from the unions is that, well, we're not spending enough money. If only we'd put more money towards it, that would really solve the problem. And I heard you speak in Washington, I can't remember which event, but you mentioned that the department was founded with a vision of closing the achievement gap from the lowest to the highest, and 40 years later, $1 trillion later, it has not narrowed and it's even widened. So
that's right. No, that is exactly right. Over $1 trillion spent specifically to narrow and close the achievement gap. It's widened almost by every single measure. And so how can you continue to justify spending more and more and more money doing the same thing and expect different results? As Albert Einstein said, it's the definition of insanity. We have to fundamentally change the equation and put families in charge of those resources. We spend, there are only 2 smaller countries than the US that spend more per child for education than America does. And so the issue is not the resources, the issue is how they're spent. And I believe in parents. I trust families to make the right decisions for their kids. And if we truly had an education marketplace where families were driving those decisions, first of all, we would have higher quality almost immediately because the response would have to be to improve or lose students or go out of business ultimately. And secondly, we would have a lot more creativity in the kinds of education experiences that young people could have. You know, we were talking backstage about how my experience of education was. I was very much a hands-on learner. There are lots of kids that learn like I learn, yet that many of them don't have that opportunity. And so here we have our most valuable assets, our children, our future, and yet we insist on putting them basically into a one-size-fits-all approach and say this is how we're going to prepare them to be future leaders of our country. And it has failed miserably for way too many of them. But now is the time to change. Now's the opportunity, and I believe we can do it.
Let's talk about universities for a little while. The Biden administration has talked about canceling student debts, and some on the far left are talking about free college. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's a travesty to be talking about that. And in fact, they just canceled a bunch of debt yesterday on, Corinthian college loans. But look, there's about $1.7 trillion now in student debt. And the far left of the Democrat Party is calling for cancellation of up to $50,000 per student, loan. And the reality is that any cancellation of student debt is unfair. It is not fair to the 2 out of 3 Americans that never went to college or didn't take on any student debt. It's unfair to those college students who did take on debt and who have faithfully paid their loans, or to the families who save for their children to go to college and have paid the student debt that way. It is unfair, it is fundamentally unfair, and it won't solve the problem. So you cancel it today, you cancel an amount today, what are you going to do tomorrow? More students are going to go take out more debt. You have not fundamentally changed the equation or solved the problem. One of the problems is there is no governor on what higher ed institutions ultimately charge. You know, they get the student loan money from the federal government, and there's no accountability on the part of higher ed institutions for what they actually provide students. So some of the things we did in office were to provide more tools for prospective students to make better, hopefully better decisions about where they went to school and what they were going to study. It's on the college scorecard. You can go and see what it's going to cost to attend an institution, and then importantly, what you're likely to earn after you graduate from a specific field of study. It's one way to help, hopefully, have students become better consumers in making those decisions. But the other end is we need to have a whole lot more creativity in the higher education world, where we were talking about the accreditors and what gatekeepers they are for higher ed institutions. They really are very insular. They want things done the same way and to protect the system as we know it, instead of allowing for new providers, instead of acknowledging that there are millions of jobs today that are going unfilled that do not require a 4-year degree, but do require something beyond high school. We need to be embracing those multiple pathways, certifications, credentials, all kinds of apprenticeship programs. And this was something that President Trump was really very strong on, was supporting the pursuit of multiple pathways beyond high school for a young person to pursue. And I think, I think this is a direction we have to continue to build upon, and one that I know that Colorado Christian has done a great job of providing value for the proposition of going to your institution. Other institutions need to be able to convince people that they actually have they're worth what they're charging for the programs that they have. An engineer is going to earn a whole lot more than someone who's graduating from a program that like a psychology degree. Well, you have to make those decisions based on good information going in, but you also have to understand and realize, taking on the student debt, what the obligation is. So bottom line, cancellation or forgiveness of student debt is not the solution to the problem. A lot more discerning students coming in and institutions really having some skin in the game somehow, really having to ensure that they're providing the value to those students that they're taking the funds from.
Secretary DeVos, you are a big advocate for faith-based schools. You are an advocate for all kinds of schools, public schools as well, and charter schools, but faith-based schools, and we deeply appreciated that, and calling for people to respect the unique mission of all these different schools. We're grateful for that. But during the last, 10 years, Christian schools have had more threats to them, whether we're going to take your accreditation away, we're going to take government money, or just lawsuits. I was talking to one Christian college president of a very big Christian college, and he made the comment that he signed up to be an educator and an education leader, but he spends half his time just defending the right of his school to exist. And he articulated what many of us have felt. It's been a unique season, but so the religious liberty and the freedom of our schools to do what we do has been challenged. And I'd love to get your perspective on Where is this going as you see it? I mean, you got the Equality Act and the calls to take our accreditation away and all the rest. What's the future?
Well, I'm very concerned with this current administration. They have continued to try to turn back a lot of the good work that we did. As you well know, we had a lot of rulemaking around reaffirmation of religious freedom and religious mission for all education institutions. I'm very concerned about this administration in particular, and this is an area where I think individuals have to continue to raise their voices when they hear and see things that are happening that are contrary to the ability of a religious institution to operate freely within its mission. I think, again, this is an opportunity. We have elections, and elections have consequences. We have to debate the ideas. We have to then hold those we elect to office accountable. And when they are not held to account, we see the erosion in areas that are most important to all of us. And I think I do sense, though, a real awakening to these issues that we have not seen in a number of years. And I'm very hopeful that we will see the kind of wave necessary to roll some of these efforts back.
You have some of the trustees of Colorado Christian University here with us tonight. If you were giving advice to trustees, just a personal advice about how to protect a school so that it can fulfill its mission, what would you say to them?
Well, I would encourage the trustees to continue to stand up for the mission, and where you feel threatened, there are good advocacy organizations that have continued to help make the case, and unfortunately, many of them also often become lawsuits. And if that is the case, I encourage you to follow that path, because the integrity and the mission of your institution is worth protecting. And I would say that for any school that has a unique and very well-articulated mission, be it faith-based or other, and we just have to continue to fight against these forces on the left that continue to try to take the opportunity away.
I know you have a Dutch Reformed background, and I've learned so much from Abraham Kuyper, who was Prime Minister but also a Christian pastor, university president. And when he was Prime Minister, I believe, they worked out a situation where the government would fund secular schools as well as Catholic schools as well as Reformed schools. Yeah. There was some kind of path forward where there was a true equality. Do you think that's possible in the United States?
Well, I would not encourage us to fund schools. I encourage us to fund students.
Fund students, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when you fund students and their families make those decisions, that is not funding any religious institution. That is supporting families, and that is supporting our country's future, frankly. And that is, bottom line, what we need to do. The money needs to follow each child, and every family needs to be empowered to make that decision. Today there are families of wealth and families of means and families that make these decisions. There are always going to be those families able to do that. We need to ensure that every single family has that opportunity. We spend $750 billion a year on K-12 education. I guarantee you there's enough money for families to be able to make those decisions and that money to support their child's education.
Looking back at your time in office, when you reflect on that, what do you feel is your biggest accomplishment?
Well, I think probably the biggest accomplishment, and I hope the longest lasting accomplishment, is the rulemaking we did on Title IX to clarify how institutions, education institutions, need to handle matters of sexual misconduct. And it was a tough issue. It was a difficult issue, but it was an important one, and I'm very, very proud of the work we did on that angle.
And what's one thing you wish you could have done that you just weren't able to accomplish?
Well, I wish that we would have gotten the Education Freedom Scholarship Initiative passed. And I also wish that we had been able to get further along on our articulation through rules around protecting women's sports and women's educational opportunities in a way that acknowledges that women are, females are women and biological females are women. And
thank you for that clarification. There's a lot of people asking that question, and I'm glad you gave us an answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that you're really supportive of the goal of Title IX. One of the aspects of which was to ensure that women had equal access to sports, and then say that biological males can also compete as females. The two don't work together. They're kind of mutually exclusive.
Last question. Looking back, what's one moment that you'll never forget as Education Secretary?
Oh, there are so many moments. I would say probably when I was voted, when the vote to confirm me happened, because I was sitting in the back of a Suburban watching on my phone the C-SPAN feed with my oldest granddaughter who's going, "Grandma, why does it say DeVos on there?" And that was a very memorable moment. But there were so many memorable moments, and I just was so privileged to be able to serve America's students in this way, and I had an awesome team that I worked with to do it, and I'm continuing the fight and wanting to make sure that children are hostages no more to a system that's not working for too many of them.
So the book again, Hostage No More. Get it, read it. Secretary DeVos, thank you for serving our country.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here at the Western Conservative Summit. Be an advocate.
It's an honor.
We appreciate you. Thank you.
Dr. Smith.
Please welcome spokeswoman for Young America's Foundation, Kara Zupkus.
Good evening. My name is Kara Zupkus, and I have the honor of serving as Young America's Foundation's national spokeswoman. Young America's Foundation is the principal youth outreach conservative organization. We work with leaders like Ben Shapiro, Vice President Pence, and Scott Walker to bring conservative voices to thousands of high school and college campuses across the nation. We also work to hold schools accountable through our campus bias tip line and our litigation efforts across schools like UC Berkeley that violate students' free speech rights. YAF also owns and preserves President Reagan's beloved ranch in Santa Barbara, California, where we host student conferences for young people to walk in his footsteps. If any of this sounds appealing to you or any student in your life, please head to yaf.org to get involved. And it is now my honor to introduce the winner of this year's Under 30 Speech Contest. Former CDC employee turned conservative educator, Jessica Holmes, is a high school chemistry and environmental science teacher at Mountain View High School in Georgia by day. By night, she is Real Truth Cactus, the mysterious Twitter phenomenon masquerading as the background cactus in the popular podcast Verdict with Ted Cruz. Jessica is passionate about bringing conservative values back to the nation through the classroom. Please join me in welcoming Jessica Holmes.
Please welcome the 2022 winner of Under 30 Speech Contest, Jessica Holmes.
Thank you, Kara, so much for that wonderful introduction. And it is such an honor to be here among so many wonderful conservative speakers. I really am honored. And I also want to thank all my friends and family at home who've supported me through this. It's really been such a wonderful and special opportunity. I especially want to thank my parents, who really did me the world's best solid by pulling me out of the public school system and homeschooling me throughout my childhood. So I grew up with a very strong love of God and country. So what I have to share with you today is some wisdom I learned from them. When I think of the West, I think of two pictures. The first is of the Old West, with cowboys and sheriffs and John Wayne walking around saying, "Well, you're short on ears and long on mouth." In this West, anyone can be anything they set their mind to because they have adopted the traditional Western ideals of hard work and a love of God and family. This West, unfortunately, is something like a fantasy. And I am reminded it is like a fantasy when I think of the current West. The California coast turned into a tent city, its streets peppered with broken needles and fecal matter. The classroom turned into a place where students are groomed into accepting queer and critical race theory. The home, broken as fathers abandon their children to be raised by single mothers and grandparents. That is, if they even make it out of the womb to begin with. The first West is the West we idealize in the conservative movement, yet it is the latter West we face today. And so many of us ask, how did this happen? And I'm here today to tell you that our once grand frontier and our treasured ideals have been invaded and replaced by the poisonous facade of niceness. And it is only by being not so nice we can reclaim our Western tradition. Now, this may seem like a contradiction in terms. How could niceness lead to such a collapse? Niceness is so well-intentioned. I'm sure we could all agree here we don't want anyone to feel bad about themselves. Yet all throughout history, people have been mistreated and persecuted based on the color of their skin, their gender, or their religion. More personally, I'm sure we could all think of times in our own lives when we suffered through feelings of worthlessness, loneliness, or isolation. Is it not heartbreaking to see someone who struggles with gender dysphoria, someone who hates their own body so much that they wish to cut parts of it off? I think it's important to recognize, for all that has happened, the left originally began their pursuit of niceness from a place of genuine concern. Any good-natured person would want to stand up for someone who is suffering. The problem is, this niceness became toxic. And I'd like to clarify here, there is a key difference between niceness and kindness. Scripture calls us to be kind, to love our neighbors as ourselves, but to never hide the truth. Niceness, on the other hand, especially toxic niceness, will go to any lengths to ease another's emotions. So, for example, the left may say, well, if a man wants to be called a woman and swim on the women's team, it's not nice for us to tell him no. Well, let's consider this. Is it kind to lie to people? Obviously, the man is not a woman. Is it kind or loving to encourage his delusions and encourage him to take cancer-causing drugs or chop off healthy body parts? What about the women on his team? Is it kind or loving to subject them to the presence of a naked man in their changing rooms, to force them to compete against a man who they have a natural disadvantage of to begin with? This is a dangerous situation that sacrifices truth and safety for someone's self-perception. Or here's yet another example. Have you guys heard about what's happening in Fairfax County, Wisconsin right now? 2 middle school boys are undergoing a Title IX, yes, a sexual harassment investigation because they used the wrong pronouns. People are trying to destroy the lives of these children because they didn't adhere to woke ideology. And these are just a few examples. All around us, the left is pressuring our institutions into supporting sex changes, drug habits, and abortions. None of this is nice. It's destructive. America's institutions have abandoned the tenets of Western civilization in favor of toxic niceness. And you know, it didn't always used to be this way. The left may castigate the West as the civilization that brought us environmental destruction and slavery. But the fact of the matter is, evil has existed since the beginning of time, since the Garden of Eden. Instead, we Americans need to remind ourselves about the things that make us unique. The actual establishment of universal human rights, the abolition of slavery, the scientific method, morality, as defined by a loving God who ordered the universe. All of these find their origin in Western tradition. Western culture strikes the balance between reason and revelation. Man, as proven by the Garden of Eden, is fallen and sinful. Yet a perfect and loving God provided us a way through Christ. That same God also provided us the necessary structures for happiness, first and foremost being the family. Scientific research has shown us time and again that children grow up happier and safer in a traditional home. Lower rates of abuse, drug use, suicidality, crime rates, all of these stem from having both a mother and, yes, most importantly, a father in the home actively participating in the lives of their children. When BLM says it wants to disrupt the Western nuclear family, recognize what it is they want to destroy. They want to break down the very fabric of our civilization and atomize us into individuals who are all dependent on this state. Yet the West says we can stand up on our own 2 feet. In the West, we can live up to MLK's dream and not be judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. Wokeism, however, tells us that our skin color is more important than anything else because it determines whether or not we are oppressed. However, the West says we can rise above our circumstances. Wokeism, however, tells us our circumstances are all that matter. Remember this, only Western civilization posits that human life is infinitely invaluable because we are created in the image of God. Only the culture and practices of Western tradition teach us to seek peace and to love our neighbors as ourselves. Western Greek philosophers brought us logic and the scientific method that has led to global prosperity. And at the same time, it is by scientific reason and ingenuity that allows us to see the child in the womb. But science and faith reveal to us that the baby is a newly created life and deserves protection. You see, the West is about more than just cowboys and sheriffs. The ideals of Western civilization have gone global. Now, when we peek into a country that doesn't practice these ideals, we are horrified. Take a look right now at China. Their despotic regime has locked its own citizens inside their homes to starve. Where America adheres to the ideals of religious tolerance, China locks Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. We are not the same. We are not the same as a nation who would kill their infant daughters because they are not infant sons. We are not the same as a nation who would collapse the whole building on top of its citizens to hide COVID-19 numbers. We are not a country who would tolerate genocide. And you know why? It's because we are a Western nation, and we adhere to the ideals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But there are people in this country and in our government who are seeking to undo all the good the West has brought us. And why? Oh yeah, you guessed it, because they want to be nice. You know, many people don't like the saying, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's not nice. It suggests you're gonna have to work for something. It implies there might be suffering involved. Newsflash, all of life is suffering. No one in this life is guaranteed not to suffer. It's what we do with that suffering that shows our character. You see, we conservatives, we're in the new West, but with only the remnants of our treasured civilization. Our once beloved land is now alien and uncharted. We walk onto college campuses where every professor and administrator stands against us, telling us to be ashamed for being Americans. They are trying to kowtow us into submission by telling us that we are not nice, and only by participating in the sacraments of wokeism can we be made right. There's real sacrifice in standing up. I won't deny that. You might lose friends, you might lose job opportunities. You might not even be able to finish college. But recognize, it is a worthy sacrifice. Look at all we have to lose. Young Americans today, I am challenging you. Stop being nice. Stop quietly bowing to the ideologues who would crush your spirit and your voice. The only way we reclaim our schools, our churches, our media, our culture, and families is by standing up for traditional values. Stand up for the nuclear family. Stand up for a child's right to life. Stand up for the truth of the gospel. I'm not promising you today that there won't be challenges, Many of you are young. You have a bright and brilliant future ahead of you, but you gotta be willing to work for it, to build something. We will, in fact, have to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. We have to teach people not to fear suffering, but to embrace it and turn it into a growth opportunity. We may be persecuted for our beliefs. We may be mocked and ridiculed for being conservatives. But you know what I say? Bring it on. Because they give me a better opportunity to show the world that our traditions, our faith, our families are worth protecting. Let us live by example. I'll quote John Wayne one more time and tell y'all, courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway. Saddle up, young Americans. Let's ride. Thank you.
Please welcome Colorado Christian University student Olivia Keene.
While pursuing a degree in biomedical sciences at Colorado State University, Isabel Brown quickly found her calling as a conservative activist. She served as an intern for the United States Senate, as well as in the White House during the Trump administration. Following graduation, she was hired as a spokesperson for Turning Point USA. Today, Ms. Brown is the host of Freedom Seeds and author of My Voice on an American College Campus. You may recognize her from TV. She appears regularly on Fox News, Newsmask, Sky News, One America News, Bold TV, Newsy, and many other news sources. Isabel Brown is a perfect example of bold leadership as well as walking with grace and authority. I also have been told that she knows how to catch a mean rainbow trout on the fly. We are honored to have her with us today, and please join me in welcoming Isabel Brown.
Please welcome author and Turning Point USA contributor, Isabel Brown.
Good evening, Western Conservative Summit. I am so excited to be here, and if you don't know who I am, my name is Isabel Brown. Gosh, it is so refreshing to see so many warriors for freedom in the ladies and gentlemen sitting in the audience here today. Although it is 2022 and we are in the state of Colorado, so I probably should quote the legendary Tim Allen in Last Man Standing in saying I am so happy to be here with all of you ladies, gentlemen, and everybody on the fence. My dad is probably laughing really hard at that joke. My mom may have rolled her eyes just a bit there. It is such a pleasure to be following tonight's rousing speech from our Under 30 Speech Contest winner. So many of you regularly attend this event year after year, and you may remember I was selected as a brand new graduate from Colorado State University to deliver the Under 30 Speech Contest 3 years ago now at the Western Conservative Summit in 2019, where I shared my experience of insane indoctrination as a student in Fort Collins and the unprecedented hatred and backlash I received for being an outspoken conservative in my community. Since that time, I have only strengthened my resolve to advocate for the principles and values that make the United States of America the last best hope through wearing many different shoes throughout the conservative movement and as a Gen Z cultural content creator. I'm a best-selling author. I host a weekly podcast called Outdated, which breaks down the lies of modern relationship and dating culture and gender theory pummeling Generation Z. And I'm also so fortunate to serve as a spokesperson for Turning Point USA, the nation's largest youth conservative organization, changing hearts and minds every day. Speaking of wearing many pairs of shoes, I quite literally traded in my sparkly sneakers for my pink cowgirl boots this evening as I arrived in Denver from Turning Point USA's annual Young Women's Leadership Summit happening as we speak in Dallas, Texas, where I spent a few days with more than 2,500 young conservative women on fire for our country. And although I am quite literally a biologist with a degree in biomedical sciences, I can promise you that not one of us in the audience had to ask the all-important question, what is a woman? My speech to you in 2019 created the inspiration for what would eventually become my book, Frontlines: Finding My Voice on an American College Campus, which was published in February of 2021 and very quickly became an Amazon bestseller. My book had the unique opportunity to open many eyes to the reality of campus indoctrination, not just around the country at UC Berkeley or Harvard or UCLA, but right here in our backyard at Colorado State University, where I graduated in 2019 through addressing the absolute insanity I endured. Death threats, my address being doxxed or posted online without my permission, and more, simply because I was a conservative and dared to share it with others. As much as I'd like to report that my book actually moved the needle and made a difference changing the tide on campus at CSU or around the country, the truth is, in the few short years since I've graduated from college, it's only become worse. Today's college students have navigated a world of Zoom courses, mandatory diversity programs, and truly backwards thinking. And what was once considered impossible on college campuses has now become commonplace in even high school, middle school, elementary school, and even kindergarten, as the best-selling baby books and kindergarten books include Anti-Racist Baby and Feminist Baby. I really encourage you to go check out your local Barnes & Noble. I went the other day, and it is shocking. The radical left has hijacked our educational institutions, teachers and professors, school boards, and administrations at every level, not just at universities and on college campuses. You know these realities, especially here in the state of Colorado, as shocking stories of critical race theory and sexual education permeating classrooms across the country are on the news every single day. And the crazier it's become, the more the left is being exposed for their completely immoral and depraved tactics to change the trajectory of America through our children and young adults, the next generation. Next generation. That's a phrase I use quite often in content creation and something you likely hear many times throughout your daily life, maybe without even realizing it. So, what does it mean? And why is it so important to understand as our nation faces, for lack of a better term and no pun intended, a turning point for the future of our country and culture? Generation Z, despite all the things you may have heard about our TikTok accounts and how lazy we may be and what our identity truly looks like as a generation, in 2022 is poised to take over the world. 25-year-old adults like myself, born in 1997, all the way down to almost teenagers at 12 years old, are coming into adulthood at perhaps the most unique time in American history, set to become the largest voting bloc America has ever seen. The generation with the access to the most information ever before seen in human history, and easily the most educated group we've ever witnessed. Yet, they are fundamentally misunderstood and, honestly, are not successfully being reached from either the political right or the political left in modern America. Tonight, let's change that. Like I've graduated from college and entered the professional working world in the past few years, I have seen the woke ideology I faced on my college campus graduate with me and permeate into every aspect of our American culture: entertainment, the church, social media, corporate boardrooms, and the halls of Congress. We've seen every aspect of not just politics or culture become inverted, but reality as we know it. I'm sure many of you in this room, like me, binged the entire new series of Stranger Things in about 48 hours this week as the new season came out. So you'll understand when I say in 2022, we are quite literally living in the upside down. And the reality that your children and grandchildren are growing up in is fundamentally juxtaposed to anything you experienced at the same age. I ask this question a lot during events, so I'm very curious to hear your answers, and please feel free to just shout very loud. I want you to share some adjectives that immediately come to mind when you hear the word millennial. Sorry, millennials who may be in the audience. Entitled, lazy, self-serving, we love it. I often get blued-haired, scream at the sky, the meme of the girl after the 2016 presidential election on her knees, no! That's often what I get. And it's true. for the most part. There are some great millennials, especially here at the Western Conservative Summit, but the identity of millennials as a generation was so contrary to anything we'd ever seen in American culture. They embraced complete anarchy, they're erasing their genders, they're bringing critical race theory into the fold. Antifa came onto the scene, democratic socialism became the buzzword everyone used, not just in the halls of Congress and our college campuses, but everywhere else as well. But the very unique thing is that in politics, we often lump youth culture into both millennials and Generation Z. And as a first-year Gen Zer, I can tell you that there is a fundamental difference between millennials and Generation Z, and really youth culture at large. Today, I'm here to share with you that millennials and Gen Z could not be more different. Here's why. When we talk about culture, the world Gen Z is growing up in and coming into adulthood in right before our eyes, we're talking about an America and world at large that has fundamentally rejected the very idea of objective truth. The reason I wanted to study biomedical sciences for my college career and pursue a career as a doctor moving forward, objective truth. Today, Gen Zs hear the words, follow the science, largely from Dr. Fauci, our favorite human being, infinite times daily, but we are told by people wearing white coats on CNN or our college gender studies professors that a disease, unlikely to affect any of our young lives at all, mandates wearing a bandana on our face and getting an experimental jab in our arms. If we question any of it, we risk being expelled from our universities or fired from our jobs. And I personally know dozens of Gen Zers who have experienced both. Never mind the fact that during the peak of the pandemic, you had a literal 0.000369% chance, yes, I did the math, of dying from COVID-19 if you were 18 to 29 years old. Today, a record number of teens and young adults are buying into the lies that gender is a social construct, that somehow a doctor and your parents oppressively assigned this identity onto you when you were born, and that you should never trust them with giving that decision to you rather than choosing it for yourself. Or not even that it's a social construct, but that it directly affects our own bodies. Today, over 20%, more than 1 in 5 Gen Zers self-report being a part of the LGBTQ+ community, and 1 out of every 137 teenagers say they would self-identify as transgender. We cheer for men who squash women in collegiate and professional sports, celebrate the destruction of separate bathrooms, and can't even get a Supreme Court justice nominee to answer the question, what is a woman? Speaking of erasing genders, the lies attacking objective truth have gone so far that we've now stopped even saying the words women or motherhood. Instead, mother has become birthing person, and breastfeeding in the medical community is now, bear with me because this word is literally the grossest word I have ever heard in my life, chest feeding. How is this possible? I don't know. And now, our own government's federal budget has replaced the word mother with birthing person, following the lead of Planned Parenthood. We're told that to truly advance feminism and gender equality in society, we must legalize the human right to kill our babies for all women everywhere, leading to our federal and state government doing absolutely everything in their power to codify Roe v. Wade and our home state of Colorado, passing the single greatest abortion expansion bill the country has ever seen, permitting the killing of an innocent child in the womb as they are being born. How pro-woman and progressive. Although I think the Supreme Court will have something important to say about that in the next few weeks. More and more gender theory advocates are calling to provide free tampons and period products to people who menstruate. Do they mean women? Also, now that I think about it, shouldn't the word menstruate become womenstrate in 2022? Amen and a women, am I right? We're told free speech leads to absolutely anything but freedom, that it's somehow dangerous to allow other people to speak their minds. 57% of millennials think the First Amendment should be entirely rewritten to fit today's standard for speech. And 41% of college students, Gen Zers, believe hate speech should not be legally protected. We're told it's compassion for our federal government to allow thousands upon thousands of illegal aliens to walk across our southern border with zero consequences for breaking the law. Heck, you may even get a first-class plane ticket to any American city of your choice and a free smartphone to boot. But the same people turn around and abandon countless American citizens in Afghanistan, who are still there, by the way, in the hands of a terrorist regime. We're told that law enforcement officers are evil and out to kill minorities in America, that those who riot and loot and destroy properties and lives are heroes we should applaud. But by the way, the homicide rate in the United States jumped 30% in 2020, the highest single-year increase since we started keeping records in 1960. Almost like defund the police isn't working or something. We are fed a lie that conservatives care more about guns than the lives of innocent children, and that the Second Amendment is not absolute, per our President of the United States. Instead, it's time to ban all semi-automatic weapons. When we voice our concerns about anything politically controversial, we're silenced in the classroom, at our workplace, and even on our own social media feeds. And yet, here's the really incredible part about all of it. Despite the insanity, despite living in the upside down, despite men being women and women being men, and lies being truth and truth being lies, remember how I told you that Gen Z and millennials are quite literally nothing alike. I've found working in politics that every generation likes to rebel against the one that came before it, that we want to be punk rock, to push back against the establishment, to stick it to the man, and it turns out the man happens to be millennials. And several national polls and surveys have proven that Generation Z, on an issue-by-issue basis, is the single most conservative generation America has seen since World War II. This is something to celebrate, for sure, but it's also something to act upon. Conservatives have made a massive impact in the fabric of American culture throughout the last several years, but we're struggling in reaching Generation Z because we haven't been willing to meet them where they are at, to go where culture is, to speak in a language they understand, and be unafraid to push the boundaries a little bit further than we're used to. I've decided, for one, not to sit around and wait for someone else to be in the driver's seat of American culture for the next generation, and so many others can say the same. In response to raunchy dating podcasts built on lies set up for the next generation for heartbreak, affecting millions of listeners every week, I launched my podcast, Outdated, several months ago to tell the truth to our generation about the promises of dating a different way, to actually establish and hold relationships, to end the lies of hookup culture, to date with purpose and the traditional values of family, masculinity, and yes, women being women and not birthing persons. When I see viral TikTok videos celebrating abortion or cheering for an end to the Second Amendment, I hit record and fight right back and get in the digital arena on a platform with more than 1 billion people present across the world, worldwide. When college professors spew lies and vitriol to their students, I jump on planes to be right there in the action, encouraging students to fight back with the truth. This is the in the arena spirit, daring to go where culture is for the next generation and meet Generation Z where we're at. It's a role of vital importance, not just for content creators or public speakers like me, but for each and every one of us in this room, especially those young enough to address our peers in real time. Historically, the conservative movement hasn't really understood this. There used to be a joke within the Republican Party especially, where people would say, if you're not a liberal when you're 20, then you have no heart. But if you're not a conservative by the time you're 50, then you have no brain. I'm sure we've all heard that joke. It's funny, it warrants a chuckle. But in the reality, this is so fundamentally different from what we know American culture is and has always been. Because America has always relied on young patriots speaking up for truth and justice in a world that has veered the other way. It's not a new phenomenon, and it's been happening even before we were formally a nation. Young people fighting for our country is something we've always relied on to become and remain free. And I ask this question a lot to high schoolers especially. Which document was written and signed in 1776? The Declaration. I was literally told the Constitution the other day, so that should give you great pride in our education system in America. But yes, the Declaration of Independence. And we have this image in our mind as Gen Zers of what the Founding Fathers looked like. Old white men. It's a lie we're told each and every day, largely because of the illustrations in our AP US history textbooks of wrinkly, geriatric, obviously culturally out of touch, old white men. But in reality, our founding fathers were punk rock teenagers and young adults in 1776. In fact, on July 4th, 1776, James Monroe was only 18 years old. John Marshall was only 20. Aaron Burr was 20. Alexander Hamilton, before being the star of a Broadway smash hit musical, was only 21 years old on July 4th, 1776. James Madison was 25, and Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the whole gosh darn thing, was only 33 years old. It is never too early to start actively fighting or encouraging your children to be actively fighting in this country, whether the year is 1776 or 2022. As we wrap things up, I want to share with you that at Turning Point USA, we have a fun slogan. We like to say that Gen Z is Gen free. And it's not just something that looks cute on t-shirts or bumper stickers or little buttons that we hand out on college campuses. It's the actual truth. Because even in the midst of a culture that has rejected the very idea of objective truth, we as a generation are running towards it with everything we've got. We are the modern punk rock patriots, rebelling against what culture tells us we should embrace. We stand for the national anthem, we fight for freedom of speech on campus and beyond, we chant some hilarious slogans, let's go Brandon, at our college football games, and we tell cancel culture to shove it. We're getting married younger and we're starting big families. We're using social media and humor as a tool to win over our peers. And we are warriors in this culture war we spend so much time talking about. And in the midst of a culture war, we need a cultural revolution in our generation and everyone that came before us to rise up and fight for the past, present, and future of America and the free world as we know it. I believe that with your help here tonight, this cultural revolution can win. We can't sit around and wait for someone else to sit in the driver's seat of American culture anymore. And we need each and every one of you to help us fight for our future on the front lines. We are Generation Z, the end of the alphabet, which I believe to be so symbolic at this crucial moment in American history. But if we seize today, if we fight in the arena, digitally or on our campuses or in our church communities, or even around the family dinner table, Generation Z won't be the end of America as we know it. As a scientist, I can tell you from experience, none of this is rocket science. I never took a rocket science class. I did take organic chemistry 3 times. Sorry, Mom. Not the best class. But it all simply starts with telling the truth to your community, your family, at church, online, anywhere and everywhere. I believe the impact that you all have when you have these conversations rooted in truth, when you tell the truth to your community, is so much stronger than what any one of us you're going to hear from this weekend has. The people in your community may follow us on social media or watch us on Fox News. They may engage with our posts on YouTube or watch our videos, but they don't know us. They don't sit next to us in class. They don't go to church with us. They don't live in the same dorm as we do. They don't sit around the family Thanksgiving dinner table. They do with you. And when they see you boldly stand for truth, they will feel inspired to do exactly the same thing. Thank you so much for having me and so many others here back home in Denver for the evening for the Western Conservative Summit. And thank you for helping me fight not only to make Generation Z Gen free, but every generation in America as well.
So Isabel is one of the most fun people we've ever had a chance to work with. She won the National Under 30 Speech Contest in 2019, and then last year we took her skiing with a whole bunch of young conservatives to film it in a documentary with McFarland Productions over here, and we said, Isabel, let's have a little fun. We've been doing a lot of speeches out here. How about we learn to rope? Now, I don't know how to rope. I'm the wagon boss, so I brought in a cowboy to show us how to rope. This is Ty Ronaldo. Can we all welcome Ty Ronaldo to the Western Conservative Summit? All right, Ty, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let's teach Isabel how to rope.
Let's do it. I was a ram handler at CSU. Any Rams in the house? They disowned me, so it's fine. I don't even get the emails from the Alumni Association anymore. It's not great. So it's been a long time, but I have done this. We'll see.
Okay, well, roping originated on the ranch hundreds of years ago. And when cattle would be sick or hurt out in the pasture, ranchers would go out there and rope their cattle so that they could provide care for them. And we still do it today. So do you want me to give you a demonstration, or you just want to go?
Demonstrate away.
You don't look like you need much instruction to me, and that's good because I was a 9-year professional bull rider, not a roper. So we'll see how this goes. All right, so we're going to give it about this distance. Don't let me hit you with this rope. There you go. I missed. Can I get another shot?
You can have another shot.
Okay, one more. There we go. Okay.
Hey, Nick, how about, do we have any country music we can play while we're doing this?
Okay. Here we go.
Looks good. That's all right. Okay. So we're stand a little bit closer to it, and it's a lot like throwing a baseball. You're swinging, and when you throw, you follow through, and you throw it right to the back of his head.
I'm just going to let you do this.
A little closer. One more?
Maybe. We'll give it one
All right, I think we need to cheer her on a little bit. How about some clapping?
One more demonstration?
No, it's okay. Let's just jump right
Okay.
in. Give it a try.
All right.
Okay.
Here, step up right about here. Yeah. Ah! That was great.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
That was awesome. Thank you. She's such a good sport. Thank you so much, Isabel. And thank you, Ty. We appreciate it. You want me to try? All right, I'll try. Let's see.
That's close. She swings better than you, but that's all right. Here.
She does.
That's good.
Just like a baseball, right?
Yeah. Good job.
Thank you. All right, we're going to continue with the program.
Please welcome the Chief Executive Officer of Americans for Prosperity, Emily Seidel.
Good evening. So I want to start with a personal story, but to do that I need to give you a little background about myself. I grew up fishing for walleye and northern pike and bass and sunfish in the beautiful lakes of Minnesota. Anybody been fishing in Minnesota? It's beautiful. So of course, as a young child, I started out putting a worm on a hook with a bobber, sitting in a metal fishing boat with my great-grandma. She was an amazing fisherwoman. But as I got older, I started to learn more and more, and I learned that there were other fish than the ones that were just in that lake, and I learned about a fish that truly changed my life. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called a brown trout. Now, I had to drive to Wisconsin to fish for brown trout, and as a lifelong Vikings fan, this was very difficult for me. It just tells you how much I love the brown trout. And then I learned to fly fish for them. And then I had to come to Idaho and Wyoming and Montana and Colorado. And as I did, I fell in love with fly fishing in the West. And that is the scene for the story that I want to share with you today. The scene is Western Wyoming. I woke up early one morning and my dad said to me, "Emily, we're going to go get your PhD in fishing today." I said, "All right, let's go. Where are we going?" He said, "I'm going to take you to Blacktail Ponds." Now, if you've never been to Blacktail Ponds, it's not actually a pond. It's a series of spring creeks, crystal clear water, ribbon thin, with huge trout eating the tiniest bugs you can possibly imagine. And he warned me on the way there. He said, "You know, this is going to be really frustrating. You're going to be lucky to catch something." And sure enough, we show up, and there are people already standing on the banks like this. And they've already given up. They can't quite figure out what to do. But he taught me how to stand there and figure out the exact bug that the fish were eating, the size, the color, everything. Because those of you who are fishermen, you know, if you throw them the wrong thing, they're not gonna bite. If you take a step back from that, he taught me how to stand there, analyze a problem, understand the challenge that I faced, make a plan to solve for it, and take action. And then importantly, to not give up. Now, of course, this was a pretty good life lesson. I didn't recognize it at the time. All I wanted to do is catch the fish. But it's something that I've taken with me. And as I was thinking about spending time with you all today, I found myself thinking about Blacktail Ponds and how what I learned that day, and I was struck by the fact that those lessons are really applicable to the challenges that we face as a country today. Because you all know we face a ton of challenges as a country. We face the threat of more and more government control of our health care. We face threats to free speech. We have an education system that's failing our children, and so much more. So what I want to do is take the challenge that is hitting every single person in this room today, inflation, the price of gas and groceries, and I want to apply the lessons of Blacktail Ponds. So first, Americans need to be clear-eyed about why we're in this situation in the first place. And I'll tell you, those in power right now, they want to point the finger elsewhere. They're pointing the finger at businesses, at supply chains, at foreign conflicts, you name it, because they want to avoid responsibility, because they believe pointing the finger at others will preserve their power. They're forgetting that in this country, power comes from the people. And that's why Americans for Prosperity exists. We have a permanent grassroots infrastructure in 35 states where we recruit, educate, and mobilize citizens to engage lawmakers to solve problems. And the main problem that we're focused on today is inflation and the economy. Americans for Prosperity recently launched the True Cost of Washington campaign. This is a campaign to empower our fellow Americans to basically do what I did on the banks of that creek, to analyze the problem, see it clearly, so that together as a country we can make a plan to solve for it and hold lawmakers accountable for their decisions. Now this is how we're doing it. We're doing this through grassroots events across the country at grocery stores and gas stations. We're rolling back the price of gas to the day before President Biden took office. And we're backing up the voices of Americans with TV and radio and digital ads, focusing on 9 states in particular where key lawmakers need to hear from their constituents. That includes both Nevada and Arizona out here in the West. And here's the message that we're delivering, and you guys know these things, but it's important to make sure that more Americans understand that when government passes reckless spending bills that juice the economy with trillions of dollars in wasteful spending, the value of the dollar goes down, prices go up. And on top of that, government regulations make it impossible to tap into the energy abundance in our country. And those regulations, they're not just driving up the price of gas, they're driving up the cost of food and the price of housing. Now, we're about 2 months into this campaign, And a recent poll shows that 80% of people now understand that government policies are contributing to rising gas prices. And that is really important, and that's good. Because if we're clear about these challenges and why they exist in the first place, then we can apply the second lesson from Blacktail Ponds. We can take action. We can make a plan to solve for it. Because Americans don't just want to know who to blame. They want to know what they can do to solve the problem. That's the American spirit. So, this is the other critical piece of our True Cost of Washington tour, giving activists across the country, represented by so many of you in this room today, a way to raise your voices to advance solutions, to go beyond just enduring this financial crisis, but to actually solve it. So here's what we have. We have a list of 25 actions that the Biden administration can and should take right now to unleash energy abundance in this country. We've identified regulatory, labor, housing, and budgetary reforms that Congress can take up right now to solve many of the issues that are keeping prices so high. And folks, we at least need to stop digging the hole deeper. So we're sending a simple message to Washington as they continue to consider additional reckless spending bills. That simple message is no. Now, these are national challenges that I'm talking about, of course, but you know what? We can look to the states as models for how to see these challenges clearly and drive action that rallies people around solutions. And we don't have to look any further than here in Colorado. You all solved a problem that many other states have: how to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. You did this with the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, or TABOR, and it's a model for the nation, but it is constantly under attack. In 2019, Americans for Prosperity here in Colorado and other organizations fought to protect TABOR refunds. And now Coloradans are getting back billions in refunds over the next 3 years. And suddenly, even Governor Polis and the legislature are celebrating TABOR refunds. I mean, who knew that would happen? But you know, this is what's possible. When you see a problem clearly, you solve it, you connect people to it, and you empower them to act. But there's one more lesson from Blacktail Ponds: determination, grit, perseverance. I will submit to you that these words define grassroots activism. This is hard work, but I am confident and I'm optimistic, because I get to see the work of passionate activists every day. People like Maria. Maria escaped Fidel Castro's Cuba to come to America, and she makes thousands of phone calls with Americans for Prosperity and preaches the gospel of freedom. Maria is here with you all this weekend. But there's also Samantha. Samantha walks neighborhood after neighborhood to knock doors and talk about the issues, all while pushing a baby in a stroller. And there's Juan, a Colombian immigrant who came to this country for freedom and prosperity. And now he tirelessly engages the people of his community to fight to keep that promise for all of his fellow Americans. Now, these are the stories of individuals, but there are two things that make them more powerful than what just one person is doing. First, these folks are change makers in their communities. You know, at a time when people don't know who to trust, grassroots activism is neighbors talking to neighbors, and it is incredibly powerful. But second, they're not alone. Through Americans for Prosperity, hundreds of thousands of people across the country are having these conversations every day. And we don't quit, because we care about the future of the country, and we know it's up to us. Your presence here today tells me that you are just like Maria and Samantha and Juan. You're invested in the future of the country, and man, I can tell you are passionate too. We need that passion to shine through in every town and city in America. We need you to speak up. We need you to take action. We need you to help shake things up so that we can build a better future for ourselves and our children and our grandchildren. Today, my parents live just outside of Driggs, Idaho. I'm proud to say that they are now grandparents as well. My family and I, we get out there every chance we get, and you can bet we throw a line in the water. And every time we do, I teach the lessons to my children that my dad taught me, because the fight for freedom is never over. Thank you. God bless you.
I just went into work one day and I realized that this is really not my calling, and I felt like there was just a lot more inside of me. CCU offered exactly what I was looking for, and I found my life changing and developing into what I've been called to do. I found myself at CCU. My name is Vashawn Hampton, and I just graduated from Colorado Christian University with an organizational management and Christian leadership degree. The online program was a benefit for me because of having the adult schedule that I have, which is kids, wife, family, church. It provided a schedule that I was in control of. Unapologetically Christian means I do not have to apologize for what I believe. And so that was another reason why I chose CCU. It was just the perfect combination of pursuing my career, pursuing my goals, and pursuing my faith. Organizational management and a big, huge church is something I feel like I've been called to do. I feel a lot stronger now since I've gotten some education and some training, and even the biblical studies certificate. I feel a lot more confident, and so I'm ready to walk right into my dreams and make those happen.
Friends, Colorado Christian University is educating 9,000 students to embrace Christ and the conservative worldview. They are doing tremendous work, and I'm so glad to be a part of this institution. You know, part of the great benefits that I have is that I get to watch graduation, and I get to participate in commencement, where people have worked very hard and they get their degree, and it's a whole new chapter. Now, it's great to see the 22-year-old get a degree. That's fun. How about the 40-year-old? Whose family sacrificed, they sacrificed late evenings to get that degree, and to see on their face a whole new chapter of their lives open up. The College of Adult and Graduate Studies at Colorado Christian University is changing lives. And I want to encourage all of you, if you're looking for that next step, if you are looking for a new chapter in your life, you want to be equipped to take on something new. The College of Adult and Graduate Studies at Colorado Christian University provides that opportunity for you. 100 degree programs. What a blessing CCU is to this nation. I want to share with you 3 special giveaways that CAGS is providing. That's the College of Adult and Graduate Studies at Colorado Christian University. But you got to go visit their booth, okay? So here's my pitch. This is my encouragement to you. Go there, because if you start to get a degree, they will provide a $1,000 scholarship to you, okay? Isn't that nice? Second, you can enter a chance to get a free continuing education certificate for the Lee Strobel Center of Evangelism and Applied Apologetics. So if you want to get that certificate to really be able to defend your faith and study with Lee Strobel, you have a chance to win that entirely paid for and covered for you. And then third, this is really exciting. Even if you don't get a degree program, even if you don't want to study with Lee Strobel, CCU Online is giving away 2 tickets and a hotel room for the upcoming XO Marriage Conference in Colorado Springs, Colorado, coming up September 10th, 2022. So please, go check out CCU Online in the exhibit hall, and let's start that next chapter in your life with Colorado Christian University Online. Thank you so much.
Please welcome Director of Mission Advancement for Students for Life of America, Lauren Castillo.
Good evening. I'm excited to be here to introduce a hero in the pro-life movement. Kevin Stitt is the 28th governor of Oklahoma, and he's a fourth-generation Oklahoman and has been married to his wife, Sarah, for 23 years, and they have 6 beautiful children. He's leading the state with a vision to become top 10 in growth for jobs, infrastructure, education, and more. Governor Stitt is an entrepreneur and a businessman who founded Gateway in Tulsa in the year 2000 and grew it to an impressive 40 states, and he started with $1,000. He has since then transformed the state thanks to his incredible business acumen, and in 2018 he received more votes than any gubernatorial candidate in the state history in his first bid for elective office of any kind. And none of this would be possible without the leadership of Governor Kevin Stitt, who signed into law a Texas-style heartbeat bill, legislation to ban online distribution of chemical abortion pills, and not one, but 2 Life at Conception Acts, one of which is a civil enforcement-style law, and another is a model of Life of Conception Act through traditional enforcement. And because of that, Oklahoma has become the first state in the nation to receive the Students for Life Pro-Life Sanctuary State Award in the nation, thanks to his commitment to protecting life. The Sooner State truly is a sanctuary state for the preborn and their mothers, thanks to Governor Kevin Stitt, and he's become an exceptional model for the pro-life generation, raising up as the nation's next leaders. Thank you for working to end the human atrocity of abortion, Governor Kevin Stitt. Please join me, everyone, in welcoming to the stage Governor Stitt.
Please welcome the Governor of Oklahoma, Governor Kevin Stitt.
Wow, thank you guys so much. It's great to be with you this evening. Thank you, yeah. It's great to be here in Colorado at the 2022 Western Conservative Summit. I'd like to thank Chairman Jeff Hunt for inviting me to speak to you all tonight. And Colorado really is a great state. It really is. The mountains, the hunting, but mostly I'm grateful for how Colorado has put my state on the map as the most conservative state in the entire country. I'll tell you why. You know, this year I signed the most pro-life bill in the nation. Which bans abortion from the moment life begins at conception. Yet, right here in Colorado, you have a governor who signed the most egregious abortion bill into law, allowing abortions when a baby is just minutes away from life outside the womb. That puts Colorado in the same category, I want you to hear me, in the same category as North Korea and China. Not even the European countries, such as France, Italy, or Denmark, go this far. Most European countries, most people don't know this, ban abortion between 12 to 14 weeks. So think about it. An American state is more aligned with communist China than liberal France on abortion. I am so proud to be called the most pro-life governor in the entire country. And I'm also so proud that Oklahomans stand with me and we stand for life in our great state. You know, Colorado's lockdowns and mandates during COVID really highlighted and let us all see the differences between a blue state and a red state. And I've got to tell y'all, my favorite day as governor of Oklahoma. Do y'all want to hear that story? So it was in 2020, and the governor of Colorado had shut his state down. He had refused to let any events happen. So I found out about this cattle show. It was the largest cattle show in the entire country. It had been located in Colorado for over 100 years. And I came up and recruited them to come to the state of Oklahoma. And it was 17 days of hotels and restaurants filled. Tremendous success. Well, they have officially left Colorado after 100 years, and they've moved their show to the great state of Oklahoma. So the governor of Colorado did something very strange. He went out and he declared a meatless holiday, okay? Well, as a business guy, I was trying to recruit more agricultural companies to Oklahoma. We're the #2 beef producer in the entire country. We employ about 100,000 people in the ag industry. So I snapped back at him and I declared meat all week in the state of Oklahoma. So I don't know if y'all have heard about it, but this organization named PETA found out about that. And believe it or not, but they set up a billboard in South Oklahoma City and called me Governor Meathead Stitt, Go Vegan for Life. So my communications team, I saw them kind of walking around the office, and I could tell they didn't want to show me something, and they were looking at their phones, and they finally said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Governor, they put up this billboard against you." As soon as I saw it, I was like, yes. I go, "They don't know my friends in Oklahoma very well." I said, "Y'all go find the biggest smoker that you can find. I want you to set it up underneath that sign." I got the Cattlemen's Association to donate hot dogs, hamburgers, and steaks. And I went on the radio all over Oklahoma City, invited everybody to come out, and my best day as governor was grilling out steaks underneath that PETA sign in Oklahoma City. I mean, it went viral. They were showing it on the news in Maine and Vermont, and my daughters were like, "Dad, we saw you on TikTok." And the news media was there. You know, here's the moral to that story. The news media was there, and they came up to me and they said, "Governor, what would you say if somebody wants to be a vegan?" And I said, "Here's the deal. If you want to be a vegan, be a vegan. If you want to eat steak. Because in Oklahoma, we believe in freedoms." That's the whole point. And I tell you that because in Oklahoma, we are going to protect freedoms in our way of life. And people are starting to take notice. You know, since the pandemic, Oklahoma has outpaced almost every other state in migration to our state. You know, Oklahoma is getting these freedom-loving people to move to our state because of our pro-business, our pro-freedom policies. Across the country, huge numbers of Americans are moving to states like ours. People are sick and tired of the never-ending mandates and the do-gooders from Washington, D.C. So they come to Oklahoma, the freest state in the country, where we believe our Constitution means exactly what it says. And you have the right to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness the way you see fit. Thank you. You know, I'm wrapping up my final year of my first term as governor. And when I look back at the progress we've made, I'm so proud of our team. You know, when I was first elected back in 2018, Oklahoma, we were experiencing years of revenue failures, billion-dollar budget deficits, decades of booms and busts in our economy. We had drained our state savings account. Our state was reeling. We had these teacher walkouts. We had 4 days of school weeks. State agencies were reported to unelected bureaucrats, and they were not being held accountable. So when I came into office, first thing I did was I put Oklahoma's checkbook online, and we skyrocketed to transparency to number 7 in the nation. We invested in recruiting new jobs so we could diversify our economy, and it has worked. We now have more people employed in the state of Oklahoma than ever before in our state's history. We have the lowest unemployment in our state's history. We're top 10 in the country in that. We have now the largest savings account we've ever had in our state history. We actually rank 4th in the country out of all other states in the amount of savings we have. Over the past 2 years, we've also slashed red tape. We've reduced regulations by 26%. making our government more efficient and more effective for the people that we serve. We have 2,000 fewer state employees today than we did just a few years ago. And I continuously fight to maintain a flat budget. I always talk about reoccurring revenue and reoccurring expenses. You know, all of us in this room, American families, we have to balance our budgets every single month at the kitchen table. The government should be no different. In February, I give a State of the State, and I gave my State of the State in February. I specifically called for eliminating the grocery tax and further reducing personal income tax in our state. You know, Oklahoma, we're just one of 13 states that has a grocery sales tax, and ours is one of the highest. That's one of the most regressive taxes that you can have. And with inflation right now at record highs, everything costs more. At the gas pump, at the grocery store. We need inflation relief in the state of Oklahoma. And so my inflation relief plan would put $450 in an average Oklahoman's pocket every single year. And we're continuing to work on that to get it done this year and continue the momentum that we created. We cut taxes on corporations, businesses last year, and the individual rate, because I believe we need more taxpayers, not more taxes in the state of Oklahoma and the United States. And this year, I am fighting for more school choice. You know, since 1979, the federal government has tried to take over our education system. They set that up in 1979. Oklahoma, like many states, is home to many dedicated teachers and children that are full of potential. But government-controlled systems, they are failing us. We know that we must fund students, not systems. When you put parents in charge and not liberal teachers' unions, that's when kids succeed. And the success of school choice, it really goes beyond the classroom. A study by researchers at Harvard and Princeton University, they found that winning a lottery ticket to attend a charter school, there's not enough of them, so they literally have a lottery to see who gets into a charter school. If you're the lucky person to get into that in New York City, it reduces the likelihood of incarceration for male students by, get this, 100%. 100%. We need more charter schools. We need more choice in our education system. I want Oklahoma to be a national leader. I want that for all of the country. But if you think about it, those that are benefiting from the government's monopoly on education, they want to keep their grip on this power. And it's shocking to me how far the establishment will go to prevent competition, even if it means trapping a child in a failing education model for 13 years with no exit options. But we in this room, we know that God gave kids to parents, not to the government. Low-income and minority kids are really hurting the most. And I believe school choice should not be just for the rich. It should be for every single kid. If you think about it, if you think about this, 60 years ago, we integrated our school system. Politicians and superintendents stood in the doorway of schools and they refused to let minority kids in. Well, today, those same superintendents and politicians are standing in the doorway of schools and they're refusing to let minority kids out. That is wrong. Parents should be in charge of their child's education. And with 4 more years in office, I will keep the pedal down to get that done and across the finish line in the state of Oklahoma. I want to also highlight 2 laws in Oklahoma that I signed, because this is an area where I think we're really getting it right. These new laws have really caused a stir among the liberal elites. The media calls it cultural war legislation. But to us in Oklahoma, we call it common sense. This year I signed the Save Women in Sports Act, which simply says, which simply says, when it comes to high school sports and athletics, girls should compete against girls, boys should compete against boys. That's it. I mean, pretty common sense. We held a big press conference when I signed the bill, and I had young female athletes, including those that were attending top-rated colleges, because of their sports scholarship. They were standing all around me. Afterwards, the Washington Post interviewed me. They said, "Hey, Governor, let's talk about this controversial bill you signed." I first said, well, hang on just a second. In Oklahoma, it's not very controversial. You know, all we're doing is protecting women's sports. We're making sure there's a level playing field for female athletes who work hard and dream of being number one. The reality is men are biologically different than women. I mean, men have more muscle mass, their bones are larger and denser, they have larger lungs, wider airways. These are physical advantages male athletes have on the field, in the pool, on the track, or in the court. So how is it fair for a female athlete or a swimmer who has been training since she was 12 to lose a scholarship to a biological male? It's not. It's just simply not fair, and it's not going to happen in the state of Oklahoma. Another bill I signed this year was the one that says kids in public schools, this is pre-K through 12, girls use girls' bathrooms and boys use boy bathrooms. I mean, I kind of scratch my head that I have to sign these type of bills. It's just crazy. And, you know, the other thing that the bill says is, and schools are going to offer a single occupancy bathroom or changing room for anyone who's uncomfortable with that. And that's it. That's all it does. Again, it's not really controversial. It's what we call Oklahoma common sense. And our nation could use a little bit more of it right now. I'm a fourth-generation Oklahoman, so proud of my state, so proud to be governor. I'm proud of all the progress that we have made to further our conservative values and priorities, from protecting life to standing up for parents, from cutting taxes to fixing the budget. The work we do as governors, it's more important now than ever before. You know, red states like Oklahoma have become havens from the far left leadership in the White House. Inflation is at record highs, over 8%. And while President Biden doesn't seem to care, we know that he has made life harder for American families. Everything's more expensive. Beef is up 14%, eggs are up 22%, milk is up nearly 15%, airline tickets 25%. Economists are predicting that gas could go to $6 a gallon by August. Did you know that? Let me pause there a minute, because this president seems intent on destroying domestic energy production. You know, think about this for a second. Demand for oil hasn't changed. We still have to drive to work. We drop our kids off at soccer practice or piano lessons. We still have to heat our homes and our businesses. You see, demand is the same. Yet this president chokes off supply and wonders why the price at the pump goes up. And then his solution for high prices is to ask our enemies to produce more oil. Energy independence has been a goal of every single president of the United States, Republican or Democrat, by the way, since 1973 with the OPEC embargo. when Richard Nixon launched Project Independence. I've told President Biden, do not turn your back on us. In America, we have rigs and workers and companies ready and willing to drill tomorrow. In Oklahoma, we're so proud of our oil and gas industry. We're actually number 6 producer of oil in the entire country. We're number 4 in natural gas. But we also embrace in Oklahoma an all-of-the-above approach that includes renewables like solar, wind, and hydrogen. In fact, Oklahoma, most people don't know this, Oklahoma is number 2 in the entire country in wind energy production. Number 2. We're one of only 4 states that gets 40% of our energy from renewables. One of only 4 states that can say that. We have reduced our carbon emissions by 35%, 3 times the national average from President Biden's own benchmark in 2005. You know, our unique mix of natural gas and renewables has yielded remarkable environmental results without the heavy hand of federal government regulations. So we're getting it right in Oklahoma. I encourage everyone here to come visit us and see what we're all about. And really, it's about faith, family, freedom. I'm so proud to be an American. Thank you so much for being here tonight. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Please welcome the chairwoman of the board of the Colorado Women's Alliance, Bobby Daniel.
Good evening. I'm Bobby Daniel, and it is my pleasure to introduce U.S. Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. Representative Boebert was raised in a Democrat household on welfare. Lauren learned quickly that she could provide better for herself than the government could. Rep. Boebert is a citizen legislator. She never held public office before her big, huge victory in 2020. She is the first woman, the first mother, and the youngest person to ever represent the 3rd Congressional District. Representative Boebert is raising their 4 kids with their husband in Rifle, Colorado. Rep. Boebert serves on the Natural Resource Committee and the Budget Committee. She is co-chair of the Congressional Second Amendment Caucus and is the communications chair of the House Freedom Caucus. She also serves as vice chairman of the Congressional Western Caucus. Please put your hands together for our favorite Congresswoman, Lauren Boebert.
Please welcome United States Representative for Colorado's 3rd Congressional District, Representative Lauren Boebert.
I'm Lauren Boebert. I'm running for Congress, and I approved this message. They're coming after everything we love, stripping our freedoms away with crime, crisis, fear. No matter what, stay strong. No matter what, be brave. With freedom comes opportunity to live our very best lives. Getting there ain't always pretty, but freedom always wins. Join me.
Western Conservative Summit, how can be messy. Liberty is worth fighting for. It's worth getting some dings in your frame over. But we always come out victorious. We always win this battle against tyrants. Our founding fathers are a great example of this. Our founding fathers were faith in action, and they were armed citizens. Those armed citizens are the reason we are free today. And I am 1776% sure that Joe Biden is not coming after our guns. But our founding fathers had a vision of freedom, so much that they declared their independence from a tyrannical king. They lived under that oppression, and they wrote out that independence. They made the vision plain and clear for all to see, but they didn't stop there. No, after they declared their independence, then they went out and celebrated it with fireworks and music and laughter and singing, and I think some gunshots. And they didn't stop there. They made the vision plain, said, we will be free. They declared that thing, so it shall be established. And then they celebrated that freedom as though it already belonged to them. And then they went out and fought the battle each and every day until they absolutely had obtained that freedom. When our founding fathers created our government, they had just been liberated from a tyrant. And they wanted to create a government that was so strong that no force from anywhere in the world could ever create such opposition and tyranny on this people, but a government so limited that it could never oppress its own people. This is what they fought for, and this is what you and I are here fighting for today. Freedom is worth fighting for. America is worth fighting for. I'm a mom of 4 boys. I looked at them and I said, I don't want them to be raised in AOC's socialist nation. I will do whatever I can to make sure my boys live out the American dream. This is the land of opportunity. And I'm raising my 4 boys to be men before liberals teach them to be women. And it is a battle that I am happy to wake up and fight each and every day. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are concerned with what's going on in government right now. We often don't know who's in control of the new fake White House set. And I was actually overthinking it. I was like, is it Obama? Is it Susan Rice? Is it the guy behind the teleprompter? But after Easter Sunday, I learned it's just Peter Cottontail, Joe's handler. There's a lot that is going wrong in our country under this one-party rule that we have seen in just 1 year. Wide open borders, a complete invasion of 3 million people coming into our country illegally, bringing with them fentanyl. Fentanyl is now the #1 killer of people 18 to 45 years old. It's coming into our communities and it's killing our children and our community members. We have broken supply chains. We have skyrocketing inflation because of DC reckless spending that is out of control. And people still continue to make excuses and rubber stamp trillion-dollar spending bills. $40 billion just went to Ukraine when we aren't even energy independent right now, while we were still funding both sides of that war. Now, I stand with the people of Ukraine fighting for their sovereignty, but with our borders wide open, our shelves empty, our people losing their jobs through unconstitutional medical mandates, our children who lost out on educational opportunities through overreaching politicians thinking that they have too much power. I didn't swear an oath to the Constitution of Ukraine. I swore an oath to the United States Constitution. But with everything that's going on, I want to give you hope because I see the American spirit each and every day. I see the grit and determination that is being put forth by people just like you all throughout our nation. And if I didn't believe that we could turn this around, I would not leave my 4 boys and my husband every day to do what I'm doing. I know that America will come out of this victorious. You know, it's interesting, even on stage, I really feel this air conditioner, and it reminds me of the House chambers because it's very, very cold in there. I don't know, ladies, are we cold? I think they keep the temperature really low in the House chambers, though, to preserve Nancy Pelosi. So I don't know what the excuse is here tonight. It's definitely either that or to prevent her eyebrows from melting. We need to know how high inflation is. But there is so much that we are going to do when we fire Nancy Pelosi next year. It is so devastating to see America put last in every decision that is made in the House of Representatives. But that is going to change. We are going to begin to put America first again. People are waking up all throughout the country. We are winning elections in many states. In our state, we were flipping school boards in Colorado. And that's because of courageous men and women, brave moms and dads who showed up to school board meetings. Despite being called domestic terrorists, they said, I have a right to say what my children is being taught, what is happening at my child's school. And when they saw that the people who were supposed to listen and respond to them shut them out, made them the enemy, they said, oh, that's fine. I'll have your job. And that's exactly what they did. We need more people stepping up. If you're waiting for an invitation, I'm here tonight to tell you that it's not coming. No one is going to grant you permission to get into position. That is something that you need to seek God's wisdom over and determine within yourself to get there. So many people say that you have to work your way to a place. God's put gifts and talents on the inside of each and every one of you that are for right now. Despite what your past may look like, we serve a redeeming God that can get you right back on track and get you exactly where you need to be to speak truth in this time. We have so many people who want to silence the truth, who want to deceive the American people. And I need you to be bold and speak out, because that is what's going to turn this around. Your words matter. The power of life and death are in the tongue. And what you say will have an impact. I want to tell you a story. We just heard Governor Stitt speaking about life. And in Congress, Nancy Pelosi's response to Texas's heartbeat bill was to bring forward a bill to the House that would legalize full-term abortion nationally. There was a congressman who did more than just vote no. This congressman got on his knees in the House chambers and out loud began to pray, out loud began to seek God's wisdom and intercede on behalf of these children. His prayer was, God, I know we don't have the votes to stop it today, but just show me that there is one Democrat who will stand for life. Show me that there is one. And on that day, there was not one. But I went to this congressman and I told him, your prayer was not in vain. You prayed out the word of God, the will of God, and that word is powerful. And it always returns full of power, not void, and it accomplishes what it is sent to do. The Bible says that God sent his word and healed them. There is power in your words. Stop agreeing with what the enemy is doing, the destruction that the enemy is causing, and start speaking life into these situations. I would much rather speak life than agree with the chaos that is being created. And I am so honored to tell you that that same bill went to the Senate twice for its final passage. And both times, one Democrat voted for life and against that bill, and that bill is dead. Ha ha ha. They're coming after everything that you love. But God is so much bigger. You are so much bigger than that. They were coming after your free speech. And in the minority, I don't control a lot of things. Nancy Pelosi, like the temperature of the House chambers, controls the schedule, controls the committees, even controls committee assignments. But what we vote on is what Nancy says we can vote on. But she can't control my mouth. I run my mouth and I give God glory. So when they came after your freedom of speech with this Orwellian Ministry of Truth, this Disinformation Governance Board, led up by Nina Jankowicz, who Secretary Mayorkas said was an expert on disinformation because she lies all the dang time, I got real loud. I led the legislation and the tweets. And I am proud to say, because of our public pressure campaign, that disinformation board, that Department of Propaganda that's under the Department of Homeland Security, think about that, a militant department of the federal government. They have means to enforce what they are putting out there. A department that was created to protect you from terrorism now is being used to terrorize American citizens. But because we got loud and did not let up and exposed exactly what their intentions were, that board is done and Nina Jankowicz has resigned. Now, of course, we all seen that Robert Francis is back. He tried to pull a Lauren Boebert in Texas. It didn't work out too well for him. But they want to take your Second Amendment rights away. We are scheduled to vote on at least 8 gun control bills when we get back to D.C. next week, without even having an investigation into what really happened in Uvalde. Look, this is a crisis that impacts us all. We're moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, neighbors, aunts and uncles. We love our children, and we want to do what we can to protect them. And that's why we know that gun-free zones is not how you do that. Gun-free zones have been proven to be deadly because there is not an armed citizen there to neutralize the threat. If you go to the FBI, you look at statistics that say mass shootings average about 13 deaths in gun-free zones. But when someone attempts a mass shooting where a law-abiding citizen is present with a firearm, the average number drops from 13 deaths to 2. The first victim and the shooter. Using ghost guns does not prevent another Uvalde incident. What they are trying to do does not actually protect our children, starting by qualifying, by certifying our teachers to carry in schools. That is a great place to secure our children. I want to applaud Faster Colorado and all the work that they've done. I love Laura Carno, all the work that she's doing to educate teachers, to certify them so they can protect our children in schools. But now think about it. Joe Biden says the Second Amendment is not absolute. Joe Biden says that a 9mm round will completely blow a lung out of a person. I think he's the same one who is talking about AR-14s. Hey, if there's an AR-14, sign me up. I'll be the first to get one. 100-round clips, fully semi-automatic. People who don't understand firearms are the ones trying to regulate them and strip them from you. But Joe Biden couldn't even get the $86 billion in military equipment back from the Taliban. How the heck does he think he's going to take our AR-15s from us? We have seen so much failure from this regime. And this is why we can't slow down. This is why we have to show up and take our country back. It is so important. Everything is on the line. But when I come back home to Colorado after being in that dirty swamp, I get motivated all over again because I talk with you. I meet with you. I see the desperation and the hope. And I know that I have amazing people that are working with me here in Colorado. And that is my motivator. You are my motivator. Coffee is a close second. I gotta get through somehow. But we cannot let up. Don't think that you don't have what it takes. You are qualified. You are justified. You are called. God will position you in this time. Look at Gideon. He made excuses. An angel of the Lord came to him and said, Gideon, you are a mighty man of valor. And he said, no, you got that one wrong. I'm actually quite the loser. I come from the least of the least tribes and the least family in the tribe, and I'm the least of the least in my family. But God has a reputation of working with losers and turning them into victors. God will begin to reveal things about yourself that there's no evidence it even exists. In Rifle, Colorado, we have rock climbing, and sometimes I see those rock climbers way up high, hundreds of feet, and I think, goodness, that woman has muscles in places I don't even have places. But that is what God will begin to reveal to you, who you are in Christ for this time. Think of Moses when he and the Israelites were at the Red Sea. My Bible says that the enemy had overtaken them. Captivity was already their fate. There was nowhere to go, and it looked like God would not deliver them. They began to cry out, as many of us have in this time. God, I can't afford gas. God, how am I going to get to work? How are my children going to receive an education? What about my children who are serving this country in our military? And we begin to cry out to God. Well, when they did that, God looked to Moses and he said, why do you cry out to me? Tell the people to go forward. So I'm here tonight to tell you, no matter what defeat looks like, No matter if it looks like you are already in captivity and there is no way out, God is still the way maker. And he is telling each and every one of us to go forward. God bless you all. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for supporting Western Conservative Summit. Jeff Hunt, thank you. God bless y'all.
Please welcome First Lady of the Western Conservative Summit, Nicole Hunt.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Hunt. I am an attorney and serve as a writer and spokesperson at Focus on the Family. In that position, I am blessed to have the opportunity to advocate every single day for the lives of the most vulnerable in our society, preborn babies. Tonight, it's my privilege to introduce a fellow advocate in the pro-life movement and a force for good in the media, Kayleigh McEnany. Kayleigh is the former White House press secretary for the Trump administration and the current co-host for Outnumbered on Fox News. Prior to serving as White House press secretary, Kayleigh worked as the national press secretary for the Trump campaign and was the national spokesperson for the RNC. Kayleigh got her law degree from Harvard Law School and her degree in international politics from Georgetown University. She also studied politics and international relations at Oxford. Before law school, she worked at Fox News as a producer for the Mike Huckabee Show. She recently published a book titled For Such a Time as This, where she talks about her faith journey in the White House and beyond. Kayleigh is a Christian, a conservative, a wife, and a mother. She speaks with authority and conviction of both heart and mind. She's not a circle back kind of woman, if you know what I mean. Please help me welcome one of the brightest lights in the conservative movement today, Kayleigh McEnany.
Please welcome the former White House press secretary and Fox News contributor, Kayleigh McEnany.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm told you've been here 13 hours, so I'll try to keep this brief. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I will say a lot has changed in my life in the last 2 years, and namely, I got to be White House press secretary for certainly the greatest president in my lifetime, President Donald J. Trump. But since I left my job as press secretary, even more has changed, namely the questions being asked by the White House press corps. I don't know if you watch the briefings. If you don't bother. I watched some of them on your behalf so that you don't have to. And I brought for you some of the questions that were asked of former press secretary Jen Psaki. It's Friday, it's not Saturday, this is not Saturday Night Live, but here we go. This was her first briefing. Could you just give for us some color about what it was like for Joe Biden to walk into the Oval Office? He's been waiting for this for so long. What was his reaction? I would have loved a question like that. Never came, never came. And there was this: will Joe Biden keep Donald Trump's Air Force One color scheme change? Hard-hitting question there. Can you clarify for us what happened with the president's dogs? There's some reports that one of them was involved in a biting incident. Great. And then my personal favorite, can you tell us about the White House cat? These are the questions. Now, flashback. Here is some of what I was asked from the podium. Let me ask if I can, Kayleigh, why does the president keep hiring people who are dumb as a rock, overrated, way over their heads, wacko, and incompetent? So you've used the phrase warriors to describe everyday Americans fighting the pandemic. The president's using that phrase as well. What's the thinking behind that description? And is he basically asking Americans to put themselves in harm's way like warriors do? No, I think he's just praising the American people fighting through a once-in-a-generation global pandemic, but okay. And then there's the question, and I went back and watched this, and you can see me flipping through my binder, and I just kind of stop and I stare, because this is the question I was asked. Does President Trump believe that it was a good thing that the South lost the Civil War? They say there's no such thing as a dumb question, but yes, that is a dumb question. But rewind to before I got to the podium, how I got there. It was pretty surreal. I will say it came out of the blue. It was COVID-19. I was the press secretary at the time for the Trump campaign. I had been with my mom, who's watching right now on the East Coast. That's real commitment to watch at midnight on the East Coast. But she's wonderful. She took me and my daughter, baby Blake, all across the country, all the places you think you'd go in a primary, South Carolina, Iowa, everywhere, New Hampshire, and then all of a sudden there's lockdown. So everyone shuts down. Florida's a great place to lock down. You got to lock down on the beach. And we're driving across this bridge one day. I'll never forget it. My mom's in the front seat. My daughter, Blake's in the back seat. She's a few months old at the time. And I get this call. And what pops up is this odd series of numbers. And I knew I'd had a few calls from the White House, not many. But I knew it was likely the White House switchboard, and likely it was the president. So I answer, and they say, Kayleigh, we have the president for you. Will you take his call? Of course I will. Kayleigh, Mr. President. And this time, instead of President Trump saying, good job on that TV appearance, or nice work on this article, he said, I have a question for you. And I said, what's that? He said, would you be my White House press secretary? Out of the blue. I said that would be the honor of my lifetime, to which he said something like, Mark, get it done. And I think he meant Mark Meadows, go get it done. And Mark Meadows did get it done. It took a few weeks, but he got it done. I say it was surreal because I had been an intern in the Bush White House. I had remembered standing in the back corner of the room watching Dana Perino take questions from the press, not knowing that I would be there just over a decade later. And I grew nervous after I took the job. My husband, he drove me up the Eastern Corridor. I didn't want to get on a plane. I thought if the press saw me on the plane, they'd say, new press secretary on a plane during COVID, putting the president's life at risk, or some bizarre headline like that. So my husband drives me up, and my dad texted me as I was very nervous, very jittery, and he said, Kayleigh, maybe you were made for such a time as this. Thank you. Yeah. An obvious reference to the book of Esther. And it's funny, I feel like sometimes when God wants to send you a message, he will send the exact same message through two unlikely sources, and he did this time. He beat me over the head with this message because it was my dad, who's about as conservative as you get, and then it was someone about as liberal as you get, liberal commentator Van Jones, who texted me a few weeks later, Kayleigh, maybe you were made for such a time as this. And I believe it's a message I was certainly meant to hear, and it's a message that is meant for all of us, no matter where we are in life. My first day was April 13th, 2020. Again, we'll never forget it. I round the corner. I had to walk the perimeter of the White House through the pouring rain. I get to the press secretary's office very early. I was like the first one there outside of Secret Service, sopping wet because it's raining outside. And I'm sitting there not knowing what the first day will bring. A little ways into the day, I get a call from the Chief of Staff to come to the Oval Office. I had never been to the Oval Office. I had seen it from outside back when I was an intern, but I'd never been inside. And the first time I'm walking into the Oval Office is to brief the President of the United States before a coronavirus task force briefing. And I walk past this mahogany grandfather clock. I walk onto the sunbeam pattern rug. It was a rug from the Reagan administration. I sit on this golden couch, and it's across from the Resolute desk. It was a gift given by Queen Victoria in 1880 to the United States. And I sit there, and the president walks in. And as a press secretary, to be a good press secretary, you're briefing your boss. You have to adapt to his style. So I had to learn, how does the president operate? How does he get ready for a briefing? And I learned very quickly, he didn't really practice the Q&A. He didn't say, what am I going to be asked today? He focused a lot on his opening remarks. It was a binder like this with slip covers, and he would have his opening remarks in there. And he'd read through it, and he would take out a Sharpie, and he'd cross out parts he didn't like. He would rip off parts he didn't like. One time I saw him take scissors and cut off parts he did not like. So he was a very self-sufficient guy. Instead of telling his staff, go fix this, he would just do it himself. And I learned quickly, I'm not going to have time to brief him. I thought, maybe I'm going to get a chance to tell him about one question or one news item. So he's walking out to the podium, and I say, Mr. President, I know what you're going to be asked today. He said, what's that? And I said, well, Dr. Fauci, of course, went on CNN, made a mess, had a messy remark saying that we could have mitigated sooner. The press is spinning it out of control, saying that we could have saved more lives had you mitigated sooner during the COVID era. And he said, well, how would you answer that, Kayleigh? And I was a religious watcher of these briefings that he would do and the medical professionals. And I said, here's how I'd answer it. I would say this, Mr. President. I said, January 6th, not a single confirmed COVID-19 case. You issued a travel notice for Wuhan. January 17th, not a single COVID case. You had public health entry screenings at 3 major airports. January 21st, just 1 case of COVID. You open an emergency operations center. And January 31st, who can forget it, there was not a single death from COVID-19. You issued a travel ban for China that your opponent, Joe Biden, called xenophobic. He looked at me and goes, go type that up. So I run back to my office, I type it up, I give it to him, and the president, if you'd notice, President Trump is a little more with it and in command than the current president. He didn't, yeah, and that's understatement of the year. He did not need a list of exactly which reporters to call in which order. He did not need a scripted answer from me to read. But that day, and that day alone, I believe, is the only time I saw him read through a timeline that I had written tick by tick, point by point. And I thought, day 1 in the White House, accomplished, until I realized I think he only did that to make me happy because it was my first day and he wanted to make me feel welcome. But nevertheless, he did. I wondered, though, if I would ever give a briefing. The president was giving these daily briefings, and I just thought, okay, maybe I'm not going to get that opportunity, fine. He does a great job being his own messenger. And then one day he looked at me out of the blue, a few weeks into the job, and goes, Kayleigh, do a briefing. I think to myself, okay, this is Wednesday. I need to give myself like 2 weeks to get a binder together. And then he kept saying, Kayleigh, do a briefing. Kayleigh, do a briefing. I'm like, okay, he's saying this a lot. Like, maybe I need to hurry this along. And then on Thursday, he says, Kayleigh, do a briefing and do it before the weekend. Oh, okay, so that means tomorrow. So we tried to get a binder together, and the binder became something of interest to the press. They had a camera behind me, and they would take pictures of my binder, and they would write articles like CNN, decoding the mysteries of Kayleigh McEnany's briefing book, and they tried to figure out what all the tabs meant. We thought we would do a head fake one day, and instead of like therapeutics, vaccine, COVID, PPE, we would do Jim Acosta as a tab, and Caitlin Collins, and John Carl, the reporter names. Never did it. It is a big regret, but we never did it. But I get this binder together. I get ready. I stay in my office. We have this beautiful wood-burning fireplace in the press secretary's office. I stay there till about 10 with my aides prepping. I go home. I prep until about midnight. So I'm ready from an academic standpoint, but more important than that was the spiritual preparation. And I woke up the next morning, day of my first briefing. I listened to a Joyce Meyer sermon about faith over fear. I tweeted out Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I listened to Christian music on my way to work. I get there, though. The day progresses. I know I'm briefing at, I believe it's 2 p.m., and I start to get nervous and more nervous. And I have text messages flooding in, people giving me words of encouragement, one of whom was my predecessor, Sarah Sanders. And she texted me pieces of advice. I know she'll be here tomorrow. I'm so excited. I love her so much. And among the pieces of advice she gave me was this: most importantly, pray. Let God carry you through the tough times, give you strength when you don't have any wisdom. And then she said to me that she read her Jesus Calling devotional every time before she went to the podium. And she sent me her Jesus Calling devotional from exactly 2 years prior to the day of my first briefing, which was May 1st, 2020. And it said this: you are on the path of my choosing. There is no randomness about your life. As you give yourself more and more to a life of constant communion with me, you will find that you simply have no time to worry. But I worried a lot that day. to the point of being in tears in my office. And my assistant comes in, Lindy, and says, "You can't be in tears. Like, you need to be at the podium right now." She gets my parents on speakerphone. I talk to them. I go to we pray together. I go to the private West Wing bathroom. I get on my knees. I say a prayer. I go back. I see the President of the United States. I see Jared Kushner, Mark Meadows, the Vice President. The Vice President looked at me, motioned towards me with praying hands, said he'd been praying for me. And I went to the podium, and no one would know it, but I was in tears in my office to having this absolute, total, and complete serenity standing there, as if I had been standing there my entire life. So I will tell you, those of you who prayed for the administration, and I know it's a lot of you, thank you, because I felt your prayers. We all felt your prayers. Thank you very much. But I will say, I've answered a lot of questions, and now being on the media side of things, I got to tell you, I have a lot of questions. Namely, what is going on at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue on literally every single issue? I mean, you look at COVID-19, and this is a president who said he was going to shut down the virus. That was his vow. And specifically, he said this: anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America, referring to President Trump. More Americans have perished from COVID-19 on Joe Biden's watch than on President Trump's. And last time I checked, he's still sitting in the Oval Office despite his vow. Look at the economy. I watched that press conference at the beginning of the year, the press conference that came just as this war was about to break out in Ukraine and Russia, the minor incursion comment, which was such a disaster. The president opened his press conference by talking about the enormous progress we've made on the economy. He wrote a Wall Street Journal op-ed this week, the first third of which was praising how great he has done on the economy. Last time I checked, we have inflation, a supply chain crisis, a worker shortage, not to mention baby formula. Who would have thought that in a Western country, in the United States of America, you would go to the grocery store, to which I went just a few days ago, and find no formula on the shelves? That is where we are as the President of the United States praises himself. And as CNN, even CNN writes, Biden's economic ratings are worse than Carter's. When CNN says that, you know you've got an issue. Look at the border, the southern border. There were 2 million encounters on the southern border last year. And make no mistake, these are not all innocuous encounters. There were 5 Syrian men who were caught on the southern border. There were 157 encounters with people on the terror watch list. The FBI director tells Congress it's a heck of a challenge from a security perspective, you think? It certainly is a heck of a challenge. And when Republicans take over the Congress, this needs to be investigation either number 1, 2, or 3, because what has happened on our southern border is a travesty. You look at foreign policy in Afghanistan, that is a great scar on the moral conscience of this country. The fact that the Taliban, they were called our partners, that's how they were described. We used to have a phrase in this country, leave no man behind. But we left Americans behind in Afghanistan. We left service members in a circumstance as sitting ducks at Kabul airport, a situation they never should have been in. And we lost 13 of America's best that day. And as Afghanistan fell to the Taliban after decades of war, you know who watched? China watched, Russia watched, North Korea watched. Under President Trump, it was peace through strength, and under President Biden, it's violence through weakness. But we have a president who was asked, did you overpromise? And he said, no, I overperformed. And Jen Psaki told us this. I will never forget this line. My advice to everyone out there who is frustrated, sad, angry, pissed off, feel those emotions, go to a kickboxing class, have a margarita. Jen, I don't want a kickboxing class. I don't want a margarita. I want my country back. And here's the good news. We're going to get our country back. Left-wing Quinnipiac, this is a left-wing polling outlet. If you believe Quinnipiac, you believe that Governor Ron DeSantis is not the governor of Florida right now. It's Andrew Gillum by 10 points. That's how left-wing they are. That was the polling the day before Governor DeSantis won the state of Florida. So if you believe this left-wing polling outlet, which is vastly skewed on behalf of Democrats, here's what they tell you. Joe Biden's approval rating on COVID-19, 39%. His approval rating on foreign policy, 35%. The economy, 34%. The U.S. border, 23%, and overall just 33% approving of Joe Biden. America has woken up. When you ask them on personal issues, majorities of voters say that Biden is not energetic, he's not a strong leader, he's not a clear communicator, he doesn't keep his promises, he's not capable of leading the country, and 49% disagree that he's mentally fit. As my dad said, Joe Biden is a lost ball in tall grass. He is a lost ball. My dad has great lines like that. And America's not just waking up to the horrors of Joe Biden, they're waking up to the horrors and the malpractice of the American media. Edelman Trust Barometer, Axios publishes every January trust in media polling, and 67%, it's an extraordinary number, 67% believe this statement. Journalists are purposely trying to mislead people by saying things they know are false or grotesque. People have woken up to the media. We're going to win in November. Make no mistake about it. The issue is not, are we going to win, but how big are we going to win by? And thank goodness, because we're at a crossroads in this country. When our election integrity is at stake, when a law in Georgia is called, a voter integrity law is called Jim Crow 2.0 by President Biden, and he's fact-checked on it. Rare fact-checkers by the liberal media fact-check him and say not true. He doubles down and says, worse than Jim Crow, the greatest threat to democracy since the Civil War are these Georgia voting laws. Remember, the MLB moved their all-star game. Well, as it turns out, voter turnout increased, early voting turnout by more than 100% in Georgia. So our elections are under attack. Our police officers, our valiant law enforcement are under attack. When I rode through the streets of D.C. amid those riots that occurred, and I see spray painted on the Veterans Affairs sign, ACAB, all cops are, and I won't say that word. Yesterday was the 2-year marking of David Dorn, that amazing retired police officer just trying to protect his community. It's a 2-year anniversary of that officer losing his life. Our police officers are under attack. Socialism is on the run. We have anti-Semitism in the halls of Congress. And most of all, at the crux of all of this, the most important issue, if you don't vote on any issue, the issue that needs to be of paramount importance in your mind when you go to the polls as a Christian voter is the issue of life. Because I will tell you, I hope that opinion by Alito is going to become the law of the land in the Dobbs case. I hope that Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned. But make no mistake, Roe v. Wade is overturned. You cannot undo the horror of what has happened to our country. You can change it going forward, but we cannot fix what has already happened for decades, where 62 million babies have been exterminated because of abortion. That is 1/5 of the United States population exterminated because of abortion. Think about that. And the White House was asked, the press secretary was asked, Jen Psaki, is a baby at 15 weeks? A baby at 15 weeks, though the baby has his or her eyes closed, can sense light. The baby has arms and legs that are moving. The baby has a heartbeat. And Jen Psaki would not say whether that baby at 15 weeks is a baby. Trust me, I've seen an ultrasound at earlier than 15 weeks, and tears come out of your eyes when you see it. That baby is a baby. And the 62 million lives lost are 62 million people whose potentials will never be realized. As Lawrence Tribe said, he's a far-left legal commentator. Roe was a verbal smokescreen, the substantive judgment of which is nowhere to be found. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, said it was heavy-handed judicial intervention that was difficult to justify. It's not a woman's right to choose. It is a baby's right to live. We're at a crossroads in this country on so many issues. And when you look at our American flag, our beautiful American flag, this red, white, and blue we see here today, when even that is under attack, a New York Times editorial board member said they were disturbed to see American flags. Macy Gray called it tattered, divisive, incorrect. BLM Utah called the flag a symbol of hatred. U.S. Olympic Committee, apparently they're making plans to redesign it. An alternate in the Olympics, an alternate, said she dreamed of winning a medal so she could stand on the podium and not put that American flag around her shoulders, but burn it. That was her desire. We're at a crossroads in this country. And I will tell you this, the same way my dad and Van Jones said to me, you were made for such a time as this, I can tell you, each and every one of you, you're in this room, you're here for a reason on a Friday night at after 9 p.m., listening to me and to the others this weekend for a reason, going through whatever you're going through, a hardship, a sickness, whatever it may be, for a reason. And God will use you. This movement, what we're going through in this country, I can tell you there's one thing bigger than the problems and the ills that we face and the president that we have who's making some very bad decisions on a moral front, in my view. And the person who's in control, it's him. He's up there. Thank you. And the same way my dad said to me, Kayleigh, you were made for such a time as this. Make no mistake, all of you here, you were made for such a time as this. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Friends, what a wonderful first night. Thank you so much. A few quick announcements. If you haven't voted in the straw poll, make sure you text to 77007 the word straw, and you can vote in the straw poll. We will be back tomorrow morning. Doors open 8:30. We'll see you back then. God bless you all. Thank you.